The boy named Rihito Takasuki thought his life would stay quiet. Until one morning, which started it drifting away. I woke up before my alarm again, not because I was energetic, but because my mind refused to shut up. Whenever I stayed half asleep, my thoughts came rushing back. And once I started thinking, I remembered why I stopped trying in the first place. So I bought coffee, which I didn't even like, bitter, too hot, and purchased purely to keep him functional. Not because I enjoyed it. I bought it to stay awake enough to not think, just to survive the morning. By the time I reached school, the hallway was already noisy, groups laughing, friends leaning against lockers, people talking about absolutely nothing. I walked faster, not because I wanted to be early, but because I wanted to disappear into my seat before anyone noticed me. If no one looks at me, nothing bad will happen. That was always the rule. I had mastered the art of being invisible. This was exactly how I wanted it. Then I turned the corner and slammed straight into someone. The paper cup crushed in my hand. Hot coffee burst forward, and a sharp inhale echoed through the hallway. I didn't look at her face first. I looked at the stain. Coffee spreading across a clean white blouse. My chest tightened instantly. Great. I ruined something clean. The person before froze. Her eyes dropped immediately to her clothes. The heat, the stain, the slow drip of coffee sliding downward. For a brief moment, her expression stiffened. Not anger, shock. Then she inhaled and exhaled slowly, like she was forcing herself to calm down. Only after that did she raise her head and look at me. I was already bowing before she could say anything. Hands shaking, face pale. I wasn't scared of getting punished. I was scared because I'd hurt someone. "I'm sorry," I said quickly, my voice low but unsteady. I wasn't watching where I was going. No excuses, no explanations, just the truth. Most people apologized because they wanted forgiveness. I apologized because I felt responsible. She didn't laugh right away. She paused, then seemed to realize something. That I was more embarrassed than she was. That thought amused her. "Well," she said calmly, "I didn't expect my morning to start like this." Her voice wasn't mocking. It sounded normal. I handed her tissues. Our fingers brushed, and I flinched without thinking. Like touch was something I wasn't used to. She noticed that too. "You run a lot," she said suddenly. I looked up. "Huh?" "You look like someone who's always in a hurry," she continued. "Like you're trying to leave before anyone notices you." It wasn't an accusation, just an observation. People who rushed everywhere were usually running from something. My silence answered for me. She didn't ask for money, didn't demand a replacement. Instead, she said, "Buy me a coffee sometime." Not commanding, inviting, a reason to meet again. Then she turned and walked away. I stood there alone in the hallway. The coffee was gone, but for the first time that morning, I felt awake. Not because of caffeine, but because someone had actually seen me. Yesterday, she noticed me. Today, I didn't know yet what that would mean. I thought that would be the end of it. Just an awkward memory I'd replay for a week and then quietly bury. That's how these things usually went. I was wrong. The next morning, the moment I stepped into class, I felt it. People glancing at me, looking away, looking again, not staring, just noticing. Then I saw her. Yukino Yoshikawa was already seated. Calm, composed, like nothing unusual had ever happened. Somehow, that made everything worse. I reached my seat and froze. Her bag was on the chair next to mine. That wasn't her seat. I blinked. Once, twice. Yesterday, she noticed me. Today, she chose to sit next to me. "Is something wrong?" she asked. Her voice was close, way too close. She was resting her chin on her hand, looking at me with calm, attentive eyes. "I asked the teacher if I could change seats," she said. "Why?" She tilted her head slightly. "Is that a problem?" No, of course it wasn't. It just meant my peaceful school life had officially ended. Class started. The teacher talked. Chalk scratched the board. pages turned. I couldn't focus, not because she was loud, but because she wasn't. She sat properly, took notes neatly, and occasionally leaned a little closer to see the board. Our elbows brushed. Every time it happened, my body stiffened. Every time she noticed. And every time she didn't move away. Halfway through class, my pen rolled off the desk. I bent down to grab it and bumped my head on the edge. Ow! I heard it. A quiet laugh. She covered her mouth quickly, but it was too late. Sorry, she said. That was rude. She didn't sound sorry. She sounded amused. Inside, she probably thought I was clumsy and very easy to read. During break, she spoke again. About the coffee, my heart jumped. You didn't forget, did you? Forget what? You owe me one. I tried to stall. She didn't let me. Today is fine, she said. I almost said no, not because I didn't want to go, but because agreeing meant stepping into something unknown. And unknown things had never been kind to me. I have club activities, I lied. You don't belong to any club. Damn it. She didn't push. She just said, then tomorrow. By lunchtime, the whispers started. People saying my name, saying hers, saying we looked close. Close. I hadn't done anything, and yet something had already started. I ate alone, like usual. Halfway through, a shadow fell across my desk. She placed a small carton of milk beside my lunch. You forgot to buy a drink, she said. I stared at it, then at her. Thank you. She nodded and walked away. No explanation, no drama, just a quiet kindness. That night, I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling. I thought about her sitting beside me, about the way she watched instead of pushed, about how she didn't treat me like a joke. I wanted to stay invisible, but somehow she had already seen me. And the scariest part was realizing, once someone notices you, you can't go back to being unseen. The next day felt heavier than it should have. Not because anything bad had happened, but because something was about to. I kept checking the time between classes. Not obviously, just enough to make sure it was still moving forward. Every minute that passed brought me closer to something I'd already agreed to. Coffee. With her. It was ridiculous. I'd done harder things than sitting in a cafe. I'd survived presentations, exams, awkward group work. And yet this felt different. Those things didn't involve being seen by her. When the final bell rang, I stood up too quickly and knocked my chair back. It scraped loudly against the floor, drawing a few looks. Smooth. I bent down to fix it, pretending I wasn't nervous. When I straightened up, she was already standing beside my desk. You're free now, she said. Not a question, a statement. Yeah, I replied. I mean, yes. She picked up her bag and started walking, clearly expecting me to follow. I did. The walk to the cafe was quiet. Not awkward quiet, just observant. She walked at an easy pace, not too fast, not too slow. Close enough that if I sped up, I'd bump into her. Far enough that I couldn't hide behind her either. I realized something halfway there. She was matching my steps. Not leading, not chasing. Walking with me. Nothing fancy. The kind of place people went to escape rather than show off. She chose a seat near the window and sat down without hesitation. I followed, suddenly unsure what to do with my hands. Order whatever you want, she said. You're paying. Right. I owed her. I stood in line longer than necessary, pretending to read the menu, even though I'd already decided. When I came back with the drinks, she was watching the street outside. I set her coffee down carefully. She glanced at it, then at me. You remembered how I like it. I guessed. A lie. I'd thought about it more than I should have. She took a sip, paused, then nodded slightly. Not bad. That approval hit harder than expected. We sat there for a moment, neither of us speaking. I stared at my cup. She stared at me. Finally, she broke the silence. You're different today. I looked up. Different how? Yesterday you were trying to disappear, she said. Today, you showed up. Because she was right. I hadn't run. So, she continued, resting her chin on her hand again. Why do you do that? Do what? Hide. There it was. Direct. No teasing, no smile. I looked away, out the window, at people passing by, all moving like they knew where they belonged. I'm not hiding, I said. She raised an eyebrow. I sighed. Okay, maybe I am. She waited, didn't interrupt, didn't rush me. So I spoke. I'm just not good at standing out. When people notice me, things usually go wrong. So I figured if I stayed quiet enough, nothing would happen. And yet, she said softly, something did. I laughed under my breath. Yeah, you. She didn't deny it. Instead, she smiled, small, knowing. I don't think you're boring, she said. I almost dropped my cup. I didn't say, you didn't have to, she replied. People who think they're boring usually just don't realize they're careful. Careful. That word felt kinder than anything I'd called myself. About classes, about teachers, about stupid school rules. Nothing deep, nothing dramatic. But something changed. The way she leaned forward when I spoke. The way she listened. The way she remembered small things and brought them back later. At one point, I caught myself talking without thinking, without filtering every word. And when I realized it, I stopped. She noticed immediately. Why'd you stop? She asked. I hesitated. I talk too much. No, she said. You talk honestly. She stood up a few minutes later. We should head back, she said. It's getting late. Outside, the sky had already started to darken. The streetlights flickered on one by one. We walked back the same way we came, still quiet, but different now. At the corner near my place, she stopped. This is where you go, right? Yeah. She nodded, then hesitated just a little. I'll see you tomorrow, she said. Not maybe, not if. Tomorrow. I watched her walk away until she turned the corner. That night, I didn't stare at the ceiling as long as usual. Because for the first time in a while, my thoughts weren't loud. They were warm. And somewhere between the silence and the smile she'd left me with, I realized something else. This wasn't an accident anymore. This was a choice. People started saying my name more often after that. Not loudly, not directly, just enough that I noticed. Rihito, someone whispered behind me during class. Isn't that him? Another voice said during lunch. I pretended not to hear it. That was my specialty. But pretending stopped working when the person sitting next to me was Yukino Yoshikawa. She didn't react to the whispers, didn't glare at anyone, didn't deny anything either. She just sat there, calm as always, flipping her pen between her fingers, like none of it concerned her. It made people curious, and curiosity spreads faster than rumors. At one point, I caught a guy from another class, staring at us for too long. When our eyes met, he looked away immediately. I leaned closer to Yukino without thinking. People are looking. She didn't even turn her head. I know. You're not bothered? She smiled faintly. Should I be? I didn't answer, because the truth was, I was. Not because of them, because of her. Because every time she acted like this was normal, it made me feel like maybe it could be. And that scared me more than the whispers. During break, she suddenly leaned closer. Too close. Close enough that I could smell her shampoo. You're tense, Rihito, she said quietly. Hearing my name like that, soft, deliberate, sent a strange jolt through me. I'm fine. That's a lie. I swallowed. You say things like that very easily. She glanced at me. Like what? Like my name. Her eyes lingered on my face for a moment, longer than necessary. That's because I'm talking to you, she said. Not about you. That sentence stayed with me the rest of the day, because I realized something then. She wasn't teasing randomly. She wasn't being kind out of habit. She was choosing me. And choices attract attention. By lunchtime, the question finally came. Someone from my class leaned across the table and asked, half joking, half serious, "So, Rihito, are you dating Yoshikawa?" The room went quiet. I felt my chest tighten. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Before the silence could crush me, Yukino spoke. "No," she said calmly, "just one word." Then she added, "Not yet." That was new. The room exploded into noise. "Not yet? What does that mean? So there's a chance?" I felt my face burn. Yukino stood up, picked up her tray, and looked down at me. "Come on, Rihito." She said it like it was obvious I'd follow. I did. Outside, when we were finally alone, I spoke. "You didn't have to say that." We walked a few more steps before she stopped. She turned to face me fully this time, not smiling, not teasing. "Which part?" "The not yet part." She studied me, eyes sharp but curious. "Did it bother you?" I hesitated. She waited. That was her habit. She didn't push, but she didn't rescue either. "Yes," I admitted. She smiled. Not teasing. Satisfied. "Good," she said. "That means you're honest." With myself, she didn't say, but I understood. And just like that, she turned and continued walking, as if she hadn't just asked something I wasn't ready to think about. As if she hadn't left the answer sitting quietly between us. That night, I lay awake longer than usual. Not because my thoughts were loud, but because they were clear. I thought about how she spoke for me, without hesitation. About how she didn't deny me, but didn't claim me either. Like she was giving me room, or time. And somehow, that felt more intimate than certainty. The next morning, something felt off the moment I entered the classroom. Her seat was empty. For a brief, irrational second, I felt disappointed. Then confused about why I felt either of those things at all. When she arrived late, as usual, she slid into the chair beside me without a word. No teasing, no comment, no leaning closer. She just sat there. Quiet. I noticed immediately. "You okay?" I asked, the words leaving my mouth before I could stop them. She looked surprised. Then she smiled. Small, genuine. "I was wondering when you'd ask." That answer stayed with me the entire day. Because it meant something simple. She'd noticed me, noticing her. And once that happened, there was no pretending this was one-sided anymore. After school, as we walked out together, she slowed her pace. "So," she said casually, "are you free this weekend?" My heart skipped. "Why?" "There's a place I like," she replied. "Not a cafe, something else." Something else. The words carried weight. I nodded. "Okay." She looked satisfied, like she'd expected that answer. "Then it's a date," she said, just as casually as before. I stopped walking. "A what?" She turned, walking backward now, watching my reaction with open amusement. "A date," she repeated, "unless you don't want to call it that." My face felt warm. "I didn't say that." "Good," she said, "then don't be late." She turned around and kept walking, leaving me standing there like an idiot. I watched her go, my thoughts colliding. Friends, not dating, a date. Somewhere between all of that, I realized something I couldn't ignore anymore. This wasn't just her noticing me, it was her waiting. Waiting to see if I'd move. And for the first time, I wanted to. The weekend arrived faster than I expected. I realized that when I found myself standing in front of my closet, staring at the same 3 shirts, like they'd personally betrayed me. I didn't usually think this hard about clothes. Most days I just grabbed whatever was clean and left. But this wasn't school. And this wasn't just coffee. I chose the least wrinkled shirt, checked myself in the mirror once, then immediately regretted it, and checked again. "Calm down, Rihito," I muttered. My apartment was quiet, like always. The TV in the next room murmured faintly. Some afternoon drama my mother liked to leave on, even when she wasn't watching. My father had already left for work, probably assuming I'd spend the weekend doing what I usually did. Nothing. I slipped my shoes on and stepped outside. The air felt different on weekends. Slower, less rushed. Like the world wasn't trying to push me along for once. She was already there when I reached the station. Leaning against a pillar, phone in hand, calm as ever. Yukino Yoshikawa. She wasn't wearing her uniform. That alone threw me off. Casual clothes suited her in a quieter way. Nothing flashy, nothing trying too hard. Just her. She noticed me immediately. "You're early," she said. "I didn't want to be late." She smiled faintly. Good answer. We started walking without discussing where exactly we were going. That was her style. I noticed small things as we moved through the crowd. The way people glanced at her, then at me. The way she didn't acknowledge it. The way she stayed just close enough that if I slowed down, she would too. "You look tense again," she said after a while. "I'm fine." She glanced sideways. "That's the second lie today." I sighed. "I'm not used to this." "To what?" "Being somewhere without knowing the rules." She considered that. "There aren't any rules today," she said. "That's why I like it." We took a bus instead of the train. It was quieter, almost empty. She chose the window seat. I sat beside her, leaving a polite amount of space. She didn't comment. Outside, the scenery slowly shifted. Fewer buildings, more trees, smaller shops. The kind of place people went to when they wanted to breathe. "This area," she said suddenly, "is where I grew up." That caught my attention. "You still live here?" She nodded. "With my mother." No elaboration. I didn't ask. Somehow, that felt right. We got off near a small park. Nothing special. No attractions. Just a wide path, a pond, and families scattered around, enjoying the day. "This is it?" I asked. She smiled. "Disappointed?" "No," I said quickly. "Just surprised." She started walking toward the pond. "When I get tired of people," she said, "I come here." That explained a lot. We sat on a bench under a tree. The silence wasn't heavy. It was the kind that let you hear birds, distant laughter, the wind moving through leaves. "You're different here," I said, before I could stop myself. She looked at me. "How so?" "You're quieter, but not distant." She watched the water for a moment. "At school," she said, "everyone already thinks they know me. And here? I don't have to be anything." That sounded familiar. "I get that," I said. She glanced at me, surprised. "For me," I continued, "school feels like a stage, even when I'm trying to stay invisible." She smiled softly. "You're not very good at being invisible." "I was," I said, "before you." She laughed quietly, not teasing, warm. We walked around the park after that. At one point, she stopped near a small stall selling drinks. "Do you want one?" she asked. "I thought I was paying today." She shook her head. "You already did, at the cafe." That made my chest feel strangely light. She handed me a cold drink and watched me take the first sip. "Good," she nodded, satisfied. As the sun started to dip lower, the park grew quieter. Families left. Couples lingered. We ended up standing near the pond again. The water reflected the sky, soft orange and blue blending together. "This is nice," I said. She looked at me. Really looked at me. "It is," she replied, "because you're here." My heart skipped. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. Instead, I stood there beside her, close enough to feel the warmth of her presence. She didn't move away. Neither did I. And for the first time, the uncertainty didn't feel like fear. It felt like possibility. We stood there longer than either of us needed to. The sky slowly darkened, colors fading into something quieter. A breeze passed between us, cool enough that I became aware of how close we were standing. Not touching, but close enough that moving away would feel deliberate. Yukino shifted slightly, her shoulder brushing mine. She didn't pull back. Neither did I. "Rihito," she said softly, "just my name." That alone made my chest tighten. "Do you ever feel like you're watching your life from the outside?" I blinked. "What?" She kept her eyes on the water. Like you're present, she continued, but not really part of it. I let out a quiet breath. Yeah, I said. All the time. She finally turned to look at me, not with curiosity this time, with recognition. That's why I noticed you, she said. The words landed gently, but they stayed. Most people are loud, she went on. Even when they're quiet, they want to be seen. And you? I asked. She smiled faintly. I notice people who don't want to be. I didn't know what to say to that, because it felt like she'd seen something I'd never said out loud. We started walking again, slower now. As we passed a small convenience store, she stopped suddenly. Wait here, she said, disappearing inside. I stood awkwardly near the entrance, watching people come and go. When she came back, she was holding 2 ice creams. She handed one to me. I didn't ask what flavor you like, she said. That's okay. I took a bite. Vanilla. Simple. Predictable. She watched my reaction closely. You planned that, I said. She smiled, unapologetic. You look like someone who wouldn't complain. She wasn't wrong. We sat on a low wall near the path, eating quietly. At some point, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then frowned slightly. Everything okay? I asked. She hesitated, then nodded. My mother. She's asking if I'll be home for dinner. Oh, I said. You should go. She looked at me, surprised again. You don't mind? I shrugged. You have a life outside of this. She studied my face. You're very considerate, she said. Is that bad? No, she replied. It's rare. She stood up, brushing off her skirt. So did I. She hesitated, then did something unexpected. She reached out and straightened the collar of my shirt. Just a small gesture, but my heart jumped anyway. You should relax more, she said quietly. You look better when you do. Then she stepped back, creating space again. Controlled. Careful. The bus ride back was shorter. When we reached the station, she stopped in front of me. I'm glad you came today. So am I. She smiled, genuine this time. I'll see you Monday. Yeah. She turned, took a few steps, then paused. Rihito? She glanced back at me, eyes unreadable. Next time, she said, don't just wait for me to choose. Then she left. I stood there long after she was gone, her words replaying in my head. Next time. That night, lying in bed, I realized something important. She wasn't pulling me along. She was walking beside me. But she was waiting to see if I'd match her step. And for the first time, the thought didn't scare me. It made me want to move. Monday came faster than I wanted it to. I noticed that the moment my alarm went off, and for once, I didn't hit snooze. I lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about the way she'd said my name at the station, about her telling me not to just wait for her to choose, about how calmly she'd walked away after saying something that heavy. My mother called out from the kitchen, asking if I'd be late for school again. No, I replied, surprising both of us. When I stepped into the classroom, something felt different immediately. Not the room, not the people, me. I walked to my seat without rushing, without trying to disappear. Yukino wasn't there yet. That shouldn't have mattered, but it did. A few minutes later, she arrived, sliding into the chair beside me, like always. She looked the same, composed, quiet, unreadable. But when our eyes met, she smiled. Small, private. Morning, Rihito, she said. Morning. That was it. No teasing, no closeness, just normal. And somehow, that made my chest feel tight. During class, I noticed things I hadn't before. The way people glanced at us and then quickly looked away. The way a couple of girls whispered behind their notebooks. The way one guy from the back row stared at Yukino a little too openly. I didn't like that. The realization surprised me. At break, Yukino stood up as usual, but instead of leaving immediately, she paused. Are you coming? She asked. Coming, not waiting. Yeah, I said, standing up without thinking. We walked together into the hallway. A few steps in, someone called out her name. Yoshikawa. It was a girl from another class. Pretty, confident, the kind of person who spoke without hesitation. Yukino stopped. Hey, the girl said, smiling. We haven't talked in a while. Want to eat lunch together today? I slowed my pace. I told myself it didn't matter. Yukino glanced at me. Just once. Not asking. Checking. I already have plans, she said calmly. The girl followed her gaze and noticed me for the first time. Oh, she said, with him? Yukino didn't answer immediately. The pause felt longer than it was. Yes, she said finally. Simple, certain. My heart skipped. The girl laughed lightly. Didn't know you were that type. Yukino smiled, polite but distant. Neither did I. The girl left, curiosity written all over her face. We continued walking. I wanted to say something. Anything. Instead I asked, You didn't have to do that. She glanced at me. Do what? Turn her down. She stopped near the window, sunlight falling across her face. I wanted to, she said. Is that a problem? No, that wasn't the problem. I shook my head. No. She studied me for a moment. You look bothered, she said. I just don't want you to feel like you have to choose because of me. She leaned against the wall, crossing her arms. Rihito, she said quietly, I don't choose because of pressure. I choose because I decide to. That hit harder than I expected. At lunch, something unexpected happened. Someone slid into the seat across from me. Mind if I sit here? It was the guy from the back row, the one who'd been staring. Yukino paused mid-bite. I hesitated. Then I remembered her words. Next time, don't just wait. Yeah, I said, before she could answer for me. I mind. The words came out calm, firm. The guy blinked. What? She's eating with me, I said. If you want something, say it somewhere else. The table went quiet. I felt my pulse in my ears. The guy scoffed, muttered something under his breath, and walked away. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then I felt it. Yukino's hand, resting lightly on my sleeve. Not gripping, not pulling, just there. I looked at her. She wasn't smiling. She was looking at me like she was seeing something new. Thank you, she said softly. My face felt warm. That's what you meant, isn't it? I asked. About not waiting. She nodded. That's exactly what I meant. The rest of the day passed in a blur. When school ended, we packed our bags quietly. As we stepped outside together, she spoke again. You surprised me today. I surprised myself. She smiled, slow and real. I like that version of you. I'm still figuring him out. She walked a little closer. So am I. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was being pulled forward. I felt like I was walking on my own, with her beside me. The days after that didn't explode into anything dramatic. They settled. And somehow, that was more unsettling. People stopped whispering quite as much. Not because they lost interest, but because there was nothing new to speculate about. Yukino still sat next to me. We still walked out together sometimes. We still talked quietly, like we always had. The difference was that I no longer pretended it meant nothing. And people noticed that too. It was the class rep who brought it up first. Right after homeroom, she cleared her throat and said, About the cultural festival next month, we need to decide pair assignments. A low groan spread through the room. I didn't react at first. Cultural festivals had always been background noise to me. Something other people got excited about, while I stayed out of the way. Then, I heard my name. Rihito Takasuki. I looked up too slowly. You're on cafe duty, the class rep continued. And you'll be working with Yoshikawa Yukino. The room went quiet for exactly half a second. Then, ooh. Someone clapped. Someone laughed. Someone else whispered something I didn't catch. I felt my face heat up instantly. I glanced at Yukino. She was calm. Of course she was. She raised her hand slightly. That's fine with me. Fine. Just that. No reaction. No embarrassment. I swallowed and nodded. Yeah, fine. The rest of the class buzzed with energy. People throwing out ideas, arguing over themes, already planning costumes. I just sat there, processing the fact that for the next few weeks, I wouldn't be able to hide even if I wanted to. After class, I caught up to her in the hallway. "You're really okay with that?" I asked. She glanced back. "Do you want me not to be?" "I just thought you might get tired of people talking." She stopped walking. "Rihito," she said. People were already talking. She looked at me directly. "The difference now is whether you want to act like it matters." That was becoming a pattern. Her questions weren't traps, they were invitations. Later that afternoon, we stayed behind to clean up the classroom. Most people left early, claiming club activities or errands. By the time we finished stacking chairs, it was just the two of us. Sunlight filtered in through the windows, long and orange. "You're quieter than usual," she said. "I'm thinking." "That's dangerous." I laughed softly. "I'm thinking about the festival. And how I'm bad at this stuff." She leaned against a desk. "You're good at listening." "That's not the same." "It is," she said. "Just in a way people don't notice." She stepped closer. Not close enough to touch. Close enough that I could feel the space between us shrinking. "I'll handle the loud parts," she continued. "You handle the steady ones." Steady. That word again. It felt like something I could be. That evening, at home, my father asked casually, "You staying late at school these days?" I hesitated. "A little." My mother glanced over. "Festival?" "Yeah." She smiled knowingly, but didn't press. I realized then how strange it was, that for once, I didn't mind being seen leaving the house with a purpose. The next week passed quickly. Planning meetings, supply lists, practice runs. Yukino took charge naturally. Not bossy, just capable. People listened when she spoke. I watched from the side, stepping in when she asked, answering when she looked my way. At some point, without realizing it, I stopped feeling like I didn't belong there. One afternoon, while we were setting up mock tables, someone joked, "You two really act like a couple." I froze. Before I could retreat into myself, Yukino answered calmly, "We're partners, right?" I nodded. "Right." The word felt heavier than it should have, but it also felt right. Later, as we walked home, she asked, "Did that bother you?" I thought about it. "No," I said honestly, "it just made things real." She smiled softly. "Good." We stopped at the same corner as always. Before turning away, she spoke again. "You know," she said, "I don't mind if people misunderstand." I looked at her. "As long as you don't." I held her gaze. "I don't," I said. She searched my face for a second, then nodded, satisfied. As she walked away, I realized something else had changed. I wasn't wondering anymore where this was going. I was already in it. And for the first time, that didn't feel like losing control. It felt like choosing to stay. The closer the festival got, the more crowded everything felt. Not just the school, my head. Every day after classes, we stayed behind with a few others to prepare the cafe. Rearranging desks, testing decorations, arguing about menus that no one would remember after the first hour. Somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like work and started feeling like time I didn't want to end. Yukino moved through the room with quiet confidence, giving instructions, listening when people spoke, stepping in when something stalled. I followed where she pointed, carried what she asked, fixed small things before they became problems. At some point, she stopped asking. She'd just look at me, and I'd know. That alone felt like a kind of closeness. One evening, most of the group left early. Exams were coming up, clubs were calling, excuses were easy to make. By the time we finished cleaning, it was just the two of us again. It always seemed to end that way. She climbed onto a desk to adjust a banner near the window, stretching slightly to reach the tape. "Does it look straight?" she asked. I tilted my head. "A little to the left." She shifted, lost her balance for half a second, and instinctively I reached out. My hand caught her wrist. Not hard, just enough. She froze. So did I. For a brief moment, neither of us moved. My fingers were still wrapped around her wrist. Warm. Real. Her pulse was fast. I could feel it. She looked down at our hands, then up at me. Her expression wasn't teasing. It was surprised. I released her immediately. Sorry. She shook her head. Don't be. She stepped down carefully, standing closer than before. That was good timing, she said. Yeah. The air felt different after that. Thicker, like something had shifted. We finished cleaning in silence. Not awkward, just aware. Every movement felt louder. Every glance lingered longer than usual. As we walked out of the building, she broke it. Do you ever think, she asked, that you only realize how close something is when you almost lose it? I glanced at her. What do you mean? She shrugged lightly. Just wondering. We didn't talk much on the way home. At the intersection, she stopped as usual. But this time, she didn't turn away immediately. Rihito, she said. Yes? She hesitated. Just for a second. You don't have to be perfect during the festival. I know. I mean it, she continued. If something goes wrong, I want you to stay. Stay. Not fix. Not run. Stay. I will, I said. She searched my face, then nodded. Good. The night before the festival, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was nervous, but because I was looking forward to it. That was new. The next morning, the school was unrecognizable. Banners everywhere. Music playing from somewhere down the hall. Students in costumes running past, laughing, shouting, calling out to friends. Our cafe opened at noon. By 11, we were already there. Yukino wore a simple apron over her clothes. Nothing fancy, nothing showy. And yet people noticed. They always did. She noticed me noticing and smirked slightly. Focus, she said. I am. The doors opened. Customers poured in. Laughter, orders, chaos. For a while, everything blurred together. I took orders, served drinks, cleaned tables, listened. And then something happened. A loud voice cut through the room. Hey, Yoshikawa. I turned. A group from another class stood near the entrance. One of them leaned against a table, smiling too casually. You really running a cafe now? He said. Didn't expect that. Yukino straightened. Polite, calm. We're busy, she replied. If you're ordering, please get in line. The guy laughed. Relax, just saying hi. He looked at me, then back at her. So, he said, is this your boyfriend? The room felt quieter suddenly. I felt it, that familiar urge to step back, to let it pass. Don't just wait. I stepped forward. Yes, I said. The word surprised me as much as it did everyone else. The guy blinked. Huh? I didn't look at him. I looked at her. And we're working, I continued. So if you're not ordering, please leave. For a second, no one moved. Then Yukino laughed. Soft, relieved. She placed a hand on my arm. We'll take your order if you want, she said calmly. Otherwise, you're blocking the entrance. The group muttered, backed off and left. The noise returned, orders resumed. But something had changed. She looked at me differently after that. Not surprised, proud. Later, during a quiet moment, she leaned in. You didn't hesitate, she said. I met her eyes. I didn't want to. She smiled, not teasing, certain. After this, she said quietly, let's talk. About what? Us. My heart skipped. But this time, I didn't feel like running. I nodded. Okay. Outside, laughter echoed through the school grounds. The festival continued on. Inside, between the clatter of cups and the warmth of shared glances, I realized something important. This wasn't a moment I'd replay and bury. This was one I was choosing to remember. And whatever came after, I wanted to face it with her. After the rush died down, the cafe finally quieted. The sun had started to set, light spilling through the windows in soft orange streaks. Most of the class was outside now, enjoying the rest of the festival. Someone had turned the music down low. For the first time all day, It was just us. Yukino untied her apron slowly and set it aside, the sweat flowing from the nape of her neck and revealing the inner lines of her straps. She looked tired, but not unhappy. "You did well today," she said. "So did you." Averting my eyes, I calmed myself. She shook her head slightly. "You surprised me more." I laughed under my breath. "I'm starting to do that a lot." She smiled, then leaned back against one of the tables. "Come here," she said. It wasn't a command, just natural. I stepped closer, too close. I realized it the moment our arms brushed. The warmth of her sleeve against mine sent a quiet jolt through me. Neither of us moved away. The silence stretched. "I meant what I said earlier," she said softly, "about talking." "I know." She looked up at me, really looked at me. "When you said it," she continued, "I wasn't expecting you to." "When I said what?" "That you were my boyfriend." My heart thudded. "I didn't want you to deal with that alone," I said, "and I didn't want to pretend anymore." She reached out then, slow, careful, and took hold of my sleeve. Not my hand, just enough to stop me from stepping back. "That's exactly why," she said quietly, "I like you." The words hit harder than anything she'd said before. Before I could respond, someone shouted outside. Laughter echoed down the hall. She startled slightly, lost her balance for just a moment, and instinct took over. My arms wrapped around her shoulders as she stumbled forward. She froze. So did I. We were close now. Too close to pretend this was an accident. Her hands rested against my chest. I could feel her breathing, fast, uneven. My own heartbeat felt loud in my ears. She looked up at me, our lips close, almost kissing. I looked down at her. Neither of us spoke. The world outside the room faded. No festival, no noise, just the space between us shrinking, breath by breath. Her fingers tightened slightly in my shirt. "Rihito," she whispered. I swallowed, slowly, almost carefully. I loosened my hold, but I didn't let go. She didn't pull away either. Instead, she rested her forehead lightly against my shoulder. Just for a second. It felt safe. "I was scared you'd regret it," she said quietly. "I was scared too," I admitted, "but not of you." She lifted her head again, eyes softer now. "Good," she said. Her hand slipped from my sleeve into mine. No hesitation. No surprise. Just natural. We stayed like that for a while. Hands linked, standing close, sharing the quiet. Then she smiled, small and a little shy. "If you keep holding my hand like that," she said, "people might misunderstand." I squeezed her fingers gently. "Let them." Her smile widened as we walked out together into the evening lights of the festival. Hand in hand, I realized something with a quiet certainty. This wasn't just closeness. This wasn't just tension. This was comfort. And whatever came next, I wanted it to be with her. The lights of the festival blurred as we walked. Music drifted from somewhere behind us, laughter rising and falling in waves. But it all felt distant now, like it belonged to another world we'd already stepped out of. We didn't let go. Her hand stayed in mine, warm and steady, like it had always been there, and I was only just noticing it. Neither of us mentioned it. When we reached the edge of the school grounds, the noise softened. Fewer people passed by. The path leading away from the campus was dimly lit, lined with trees that swayed gently in the evening breeze. She slowed her pace. "So," she said lightly, "does this feel strange to you?" I thought about it, about how my heart was still racing, about how my hand felt too important to let go of, about how calm I felt at the same time. "Yeah," I admitted, "but not in a bad way." She smiled, eyes forward. "Good, because it feels strange to me too." We stopped under one of the trees. The light from the street lamp above us was soft, catching in her hair, tracing the quiet curve of her face. For a moment, Neither of us spoke. Then she turned toward me, still holding my hand. "You know," she said almost casually, "once people see this, they won't stop talking." "I know. You won't be able to hide anymore." I met her gaze. "I don't want to." The words surprised me with how easily they came out. Her expression changed. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but something in her eyes softened, like she'd been waiting to hear that. She stepped closer, so close that I could feel the warmth of her breath. "So this," she said quietly, "is you choosing?" "Yes." She searched my face one more time, not testing, confirming. Then her free hand lifted, hesitated for half a second, and rested against my chest, right over my heart. I froze. My breath caught. Her touch was light, almost careful, but it sent a shock through me anyway. "You're really loud right now," she said softly. I laughed under my breath. "That obvious?" She nodded. "Very." She didn't move her hand away. Instead, she leaned in, slowly, not rushing, not pulling away, close enough that if I moved even slightly, our lips would touch. The space between us felt fragile, like something that could shatter if handled wrong. "Rihito," she whispered. I swallowed. "Yukino." That was all it took. She closed the distance. Brief, almost tentative, like we were both checking whether this was real. Her lips were warm, gentle, lingering just long enough for my mind to go completely blank. When she pulled back, neither of us spoke. We just stood there, close enough that our foreheads nearly touched. "Okay," she said quietly, like she was grounding herself. "Okay," I echoed, still stunned. She laughed softly, embarrassed now, just a little. "That was my first time," she admitted. My heart skipped. "Mine too." That made her smile wider than before. "Good," she said. "Then we're even." She slipped her hand back into mine, fingers intertwining naturally. As we started walking again, her shoulder brushed against mine. This time I didn't stiffen. I leaned in slightly. She noticed, and stayed. The night air felt cooler, but my chest felt warm, full in a way I'd never felt before. This wasn't an accident anymore. This wasn't uncertainty. And as we walked together, hands linked, steps matched, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't invisible anymore, and I didn't want to be. The walk home felt shorter than usual. Not because the distance had changed, but because neither of us wanted it to end. We slowed down without talking about it, our steps falling into an easy rhythm. Her hand was still in mine, fingers relaxed now, no longer tentative, like it had decided this was where it belonged. I kept glancing at her without realizing it. She noticed. "You're staring," she said, not unkindly. "Sorry." She smiled. I didn't say stop. That made my ears heat up. We reached the familiar intersection where we usually parted ways. The streetlight above us flickered softly, casting a warm glow over the quiet road. This was normally where she'd say goodbye and walk off without looking back. Tonight, she didn't. She stopped. So did I. Neither of us spoke at first. The silence wasn't awkward. It was heavy, full of things we hadn't said yet. "You know," she said eventually, "things are going to change. I know. People will ask questions. I know." She looked at me. "And you won't run?" I met her eyes. "I won't." She searched my face for any hint of doubt. Didn't find it. She stepped closer again, closing the already small distance between us. I could feel the warmth of her body now, could smell that faint familiar scent from earlier. She leaned her forehead lightly against my chest, just rested there. I froze at first, then slowly, carefully, lifted my arms and wrapped them around her. A real hug. Not rushed, not clumsy. Her arms slid around my waist, holding me just as firmly. Neither of us moved for a while. Her breathing slowed. Mine followed. "This is nice," she murmured. "It is." She shifted slightly, her cheek brushing against my collarbone. sending a quiet shiver through me. For a split second, I became painfully aware of how close everything was, how easy it would be to cross some invisible line. She seemed to sense it too, because she tightened her hold just a little. Not inviting, not pushing away, just grounding. "I don't want to rush," she said softly. "Me neither." She pulled back just enough to look up at me. "I like this pace." "So do I." That answer made her smile, gentle, relieved. She reached up and adjusted my collar again, like she'd done earlier. Fingers lingering for just a heartbeat too long near my neck. "Walk me a little further," she said. Not a request, a wish. I nodded. We walked past the intersection down a quieter street neither of us usually took. The houses were dark, curtains drawn, the world tucked away for the night. At one point, she stumbled slightly on an uneven patch of pavement. I instinctively tightened my grip on her hand and placed my other hand at her waist to steady her. She froze, looked up at me. I immediately pulled back. "Sorry." She shook her head quickly. "It's okay," she said. "Just warn me next time." There was no annoyance in her voice, just awareness. My hand dropped back to my side, but hers stayed firmly in mine. We reached the point where the street curved away toward her home. This time she turned to face me first. "I had fun today," she said. "So did I." She hesitated, then leaned in and pressed a light kiss to my cheek. Not rushed, not hidden. My heart almost stopped. "Good night, Rihito." "Good night, Yukino." She took a few steps back, still facing me. "See you Monday," she added. "I'll be there." She smiled once more, then turned and walked away. I stayed where I was until she disappeared around the corner. Only then did I exhale. My hands still felt warm. My chest felt full. As I finally turned toward home, one thought settled quietly in my mind. This wasn't just about being seen anymore. It was about staying. And this time, I wanted to. Monday felt different the moment I stepped out of my house. Not heavier, not lighter, just deliberate. I walked at my own pace this time. Didn't rush, didn't try to arrive early just to disappear into my seat. When I reached the school gate, a few classmates passed me, talking loudly about the festival, about who confessed to whom, about what everyone had seen. I heard my name once. I didn't flinch. When I entered the classroom, she was already there. Yukino sat in her seat, posture relaxed, talking quietly with someone from the front row. When she noticed me, her voice trailed off naturally, like the conversation had reached its end anyway. Her eyes met mine. She smiled. Not small, not cautious, open. "Morning," she said. "Morning." I sat down beside her. Our shoulders brushed, familiar now, comfortable. Someone behind us whispered something I couldn't make out. Another desk scraped as someone leaned too far back, trying to look. Yukino leaned slightly closer to me. "They're staring," she murmured. I glanced sideways. "Do you want me to move?" She shook her head. "No," she said. "I want you to stay." So I did. During class, she passed me a note. Just one line. "Did you sleep well?" I hesitated, then wrote back. "Better than usual." She glanced at it, then covered her mouth with her hand, smiling to herself. That small reaction felt more intimate than the kiss had. At lunch, things became obvious. When we stood up together, someone joked, "Wow, you two are really inseparable now." Yukino didn't deny it. Neither did I. We sat together, trays side by side. At one point, she reached over without looking and stole one of my fries. I stared at her. She finally looked up. "What?" "That was mine." She smiled sweetly. "You weren't eating it." I sighed. "You're impossible." "And yet," she said, taking another bite, "you're still here." She was right. After lunch, as we walked down the hallway, a teacher passed by and paused. "You too," she said, Festival committee did well this year. Thank you, Yukino replied politely. The teacher smiled knowingly. Good teamwork. When she walked away, Yukino glanced at me. Teamwork, she repeated. I nodded. I liked the sound of that. That afternoon, as classes ended, she lingered at her desk. You free? She asked. Yeah. We walked out together again. But instead of heading straight for the gate, she tugged gently on my sleeve. Come with me for a minute. She led me up the stairs to the quiet corridor near the old music room. No one used it this late. The windows were open, letting in the cool air. She stopped near one of them and turned to face me. You were different today, she said. So were you. She tilted her head. How? More sure. She smiled a bat. That's because I am. She stepped closer, closing the familiar space between us. Her hand rested lightly on my arm this time, fingers warm through the fabric. I don't want to hide anymore, she said quietly. But I also don't want to rush past what this is. I don't want to rush either, I said. I just don't want to lose it. Her expression softened. You won't, she said. Not if you keep choosing like you did. She leaned in again, slower this time. The kiss wasn't tentative now, still gentle, still careful. Her hand slid from my arm to my chest, steadying herself as much as touching me. I placed my hands at her waist, conscious of every inch of distance, and every inch that wasn't there anymore. When we pulled apart, her forehead rested briefly against mine. We should go, she whispered, before someone comes looking. I nodded, reluctant but smiling. As we walked back down the stairs, she slipped her fingers into mine again, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And walking beside her, surrounded by the ordinary noise of school life, I realized something quietly profound. This wasn't a sudden transformation. I wasn't a different person. I was still Rihito Takasuki. I was just no longer alone in choosing where to stand. And somehow, that made all the difference. The days that followed settled into something gentle, not boring, not explosive, comfortable in a way I'd never experienced before. Yukino and I didn't suddenly become inseparable in an obvious dramatic way. We didn't announce anything. We didn't explain ourselves. We just existed together. And somehow, that was louder than any confession. In class, she'd lean over and whisper small things. Comments about the teacher, observations about classmates, quiet jokes meant only for me. Sometimes, when she laughed, she'd instinctively grab my sleeve, like she needed something solid to hold on to. I never pulled away. During lunch, she'd sit across from me, or beside me, depending on her mood. Sometimes, she'd steal my food openly. Other times, she'd hesitate, glance at me first, and only take it after I nodded. It was subtle, but it was ours. One afternoon, while we were walking out together, rain started falling suddenly. Not heavy, just enough to soak through uniforms if you stayed out too long. We ducked under the awning near the shoe lockers. The space was narrow, too narrow, our backs pressed lightly against the wall, shoulders brushing, the sound of rain filling the quiet between us. She looked up at the sky, then back at me. Looks like we're stuck, she said. I don't mind. She smiled. The rain showed no sign of stopping. Someone ran past us, laughing, splashing through puddles. The world kept moving, but we stayed where we were. She shifted her weight slightly, and without meaning to, her hip brushed against mine. She froze. So did I. Sorry, she said softly. It's okay. She didn't move away. Instead, she looked at me, really looked at me, with an expression that made my chest tighten. Rihito, she said quietly, can I ask you something? Anything. Why me? The question caught me off guard. Why did you stop hiding? She continued. Why did you choose to stand there that day at the cafe, at the festival? Why now? I thought about it. About the way she noticed things other people ignored. About how she never pushed, but never let me disappear either. Because, I said slowly, you made me feel like I wouldn't lose myself by being seen. That's not fair, she murmured. Why? Because that makes me want to stay, she said. The rain softened, turning into a quiet drizzle. She reached out, hesitated for just a second, then rested her hand against my arm. Her fingers slid down naturally, finding mine. She intertwined them without looking. I've always been careful, she said. People expect things from me. They decide who I am before I say anything. I know. But with you, she continued, I don't feel like I have to perform. The word echoed in me. Perform. I squeezed her hand gently. You don't, I said. Not with me. She leaned closer, resting her head lightly against my shoulder. The contact was simple, but it felt intimate in a way that went deeper than kissing. We stayed like that until the rain stopped. When it finally did, neither of us moved right away. Then she straightened, a little embarrassed, and cleared her throat. Yeah. As we walked home together, she didn't let go of my hand. That night, lying in bed, I thought about how easily she'd fit there. How natural it felt to stand beside her, without wondering where I belonged. For most of my life, I'd tried to make myself smaller, quieter, easier to overlook. But with Yukino, I didn't feel like I needed to shrink. I felt like I could grow, slowly, carefully, without fear of disappearing. And I realized something that made my chest ache in the best way. This wasn't just a romance, it was a place. And for the first time, I felt like I'd found somewhere I wanted to stay. The calm didn't last forever. I think part of me knew that. It always does, right when things start to feel like they belong to you. The change came quietly, the way most important things do. It was a message, not to me, to her. I noticed it because Yukino went still beside me in class. Her phone buzzed once on the desk. She glanced at the screen, and for just a second, the softness she'd been carrying with her lately slipped. Not fear, guarded. She turned the phone face down and met my eyes. After school, she said, "Can you walk with me?" The question itself wasn't strange. The way she asked was, of course. She nodded, relieved, and that alone told me it mattered. The rest of the day passed slower than usual. She was quieter, but not distant. Still close, still present, just thoughtful, like something heavy was sitting just out of sight. When the final bell rang, she packed her bag carefully and waited for me without saying a word. We walked out together, but instead of heading toward the station, she turned in the opposite direction, toward a quieter neighborhood behind the school. My house is this way, she said, as if it were nothing. I blinked. Oh. She smiled faintly. You don't have to come all the way if you don't want to. I want to. That answer came easily now. The streets grew narrower as we walked. Familiar, lived in. Small houses with bikes leaning against walls. Laundry hanging from balconies. The kind of place that felt warm without trying to be impressive. This is where I grew up, she said again, slower this time. I don't bring many people here. I'm honored, I replied, half joking. She didn't laugh. Instead, she stopped in front of a modest house with a small garden out front. Everything was neat, carefully kept. My mother's home early today, she said. She knows about you. My heart skipped. She does? She's very observant, Yukino said. I get that from her. She hesitated at the gate, fingers tightening around the strap of her bag. I just wanted you to know, she continued, before someone else says something. Says what? That we're close, she said. That we've changed. I stepped closer. So have I said quietly. She looked at me then, not testing, not teasing, just open. That's why I wanted you here, she said. Not to explain, just to stand with me. I nodded. I'm not going anywhere. She exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding that breath all day. At the door, she paused again. Rihito, she said, softer now. If this gets complicated, if people misunderstand, will you regret choosing this? I didn't hesitate. No. The certainty in my voice surprised even me. Her expression softened, and for a moment, all the composure she carried slipped away. She stepped forward and hugged me. Not careful this time, not tentative. Her arms wrapped around my waist, her forehead pressing into my chest. I felt the warmth of her, the quiet trust in the way she leaned into me without holding back. I hugged her back, one hand resting between her shoulders, steady and sure. "It's okay," I murmured. "I've got you." She stayed like that for a few seconds longer than necessary. Then she pulled back, cheeks faintly pink. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For choosing," she replied. The door behind her opened, and a woman's voice called her name. Yukino turned, composed again, but her hand found mine for just a moment before she let go. A silent promise. As I walked home alone that evening, the air felt different, heavier, but not in a way that made me want to retreat. For the first time, the story wasn't just about the two of us in quiet corners. It was beginning to touch the rest of the world. And standing there, replaying the way she'd hugged me, like she trusted me with something fragile, I realized something important. This wasn't the end of the calm. It was the start of something deeper, something that would ask more of me. And this time, I was ready to answer. I stayed awake longer than I meant to that night. Not because I was anxious, but because my mind kept replaying the way she'd hugged me. Like she'd decided, without words, that I was somewhere she could rest. That feeling stayed with me into the next morning. At school, everything looked the same. Same desks, same hallway noise, same tired faces. And yet, when I saw Yukino walk through the door, something shifted again. She looked composed, as always. Hair neat, expression calm. But when she reached her seat and sat beside me, she leaned just a little closer than usual. A silent reassurance. "You okay?" I asked quietly. She nodded. "Yeah." Then after a beat, she added, "Thank you for yesterday. For walking with you. For not making it heavy." I smiled. "You don't make things heavy. You make them real." She looked at me for a second longer than necessary, then turned away before I could read too much into her expression. During lunch, I noticed it for the first time. The way she'd instinctively check where I was before sitting down. The way her knee brushed mine under the table and didn't move away. The way her fingers would find my sleeve when she laughed too hard. It wasn't dramatic. It was constant. And that constancy was dangerous in the best way. After school, we didn't rush out like usual. We stayed behind, pretending to organize papers we didn't need to organize, just to spend a little more time in the empty classroom. The light outside softened again, casting long shadows across the desks. She leaned against the window, watching the sky. "Rihito," she said, breaking the quiet. "Yeah? Do you ever feel like things are changing too fast?" I considered the question. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but I don't feel like they're wrong." "That's what scares me," she said softly. "I'm used to being careful, to thinking ahead. And now?" "And now," she continued, "I just want to stay where I am." I stepped closer, not rushing, not hesitating. "You don't have to figure everything out at once," I said. "We can just be here." She searched my face. Then, slowly, she reached out and placed her hands on my arms, sliding them upward until they rested on my shoulders. My breath caught. She was close again. Close enough that the space between us felt intentional. "I like being here," she said. "So do I." She leaned in, not as suddenly as before, not tentative either. The kiss this time was longer, still gentle, still careful, but unmistakably real. Her hands tightened slightly at my shoulders. Mine rested at her waist, warm and steady, holding her like I meant it. When we pulled apart, her forehead rested against mine again. Her breathing was uneven. Mine too. "We should stop," she murmured. "Yeah," I agreed. Neither of us moved. She laughed softly, a little embarrassed, and rested her head against my shoulder. "This is unfair," she said. "You make it hard to be sensible." I smiled. "You're doing fine." She tilted her head to look up at me. "So are you." When we finally left the classroom, the school was almost empty. As we walked down the stairs together, she slipped her hand into mine without thinking, and I realized something quietly, deeply true. This wasn't just closeness anymore, it was trust. And trust, once given, changes everything. As we stepped out into the evening air, I knew whatever came next, questions, pressure, misunderstandings, it wouldn't undo what we were building. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't just reacting to what happened, I was choosing where to stand. And I was standing with her. The next test didn't come loudly, it came in the form of eyes. Lots of them. By the end of the week, it was impossible to pretend we were unnoticed. We didn't announce anything, but we also didn't hide. We walked in together, sat together, left together, and people filled in the gaps on their own. Whispers followed us down hallways. Glances lingered longer than before. I felt it most when Yukino wasn't looking. When someone would glance at me, then back at her, like they were trying to figure out how I fit into the picture. It didn't scare me the way it used to, but it did make me aware. One afternoon, as we were changing shoes to leave, someone I barely knew spoke up. "Hey, Rihito." I turned. "Yoshikawa's really popular, you know." I waited. He smiled like he was being friendly. "Just saying. People like her don't usually what?" Yukino asked calmly. She was standing beside me now, bag over her shoulder, eyes sharp but composed. The guy stiffened. Nothing. I didn't mean." "I know," she said. "You meant to warn him." She stepped closer to me, close enough that her arm brushed mine. "But he doesn't need it." Her hand found mine. Not tight, not dramatic, certain. The guy muttered something and left. I exhaled slowly. "You didn't have to do that," I said. "I wanted to," she replied. "And I don't want you thinking you're standing somewhere you don't belong." I looked at her. "I don't anymore." That made her smile, soft, relieved. Later that evening, we took the long way home again. The sky was darker now, the air cooler. Streetlights flickered on one by one, painting the road in warm pools of light. At one point, she stopped suddenly. "Wait." I turned. "What's wrong?" She hesitated, then stepped closer, pressing me lightly back against a fence. My breath caught. Not fear, just surprise. Her hands rested on either side of me. Not trapping, just there. "I want to ask you something," she said quietly. "Okay. If things get harder," she continued, eyes searching mine. "If people say things they shouldn't, will you still look at me the same way?" I lifted my hands and rested them at her waist, steadying us both. "Yes," she exhaled shakily, like she'd been holding that question in longer than I realized. "Good," she whispered. She leaned in and kissed me again. Not careful this time, still gentle, but more certain. Her lips lingered, pressing just a little longer, her fingers curling into my jacket as if grounding herself. When she pulled back, her forehead rested against mine. "I'm not brave all the time," she admitted. I smiled softly. "Neither am I." She laughed quietly at that, then rested her head against my chest again, listening. We stayed like that for a moment longer than we should have. Then she stepped back, cheeks faintly pink. "We should go," she said, "before I forget where we are." I nodded, still catching my breath. As we walked on, our fingers found each other again naturally, and with every step, I realized something more clearly. This wasn't about being worthy of her. It was about standing beside her when it mattered. And no matter how many eyes followed us now, I wasn't stepping back. I was staying right where I was, with her. The pressure didn't disappear after that. It shifted. It followed us in quieter ways. Notes passed in class, pauses in conversations when we walked by, teachers watching us a little longer than before. None of it was hostile. None of it was kind either. It was attention, and attention had weight. One afternoon, as we were leaving school together, Yukino slowed down again. She always did that when something was on her mind. "Rihito," she said, "can I come over tomorrow?" The question caught me off guard. "To your place," she added quickly, "just for a bit." I nodded before I could overthink it. "Yeah, of course." She studied my face, like she was making sure I meant it. "I want to see where you live," she said, "not because I'm curious, because it matters." That night I cleaned my room more than I ever had in my life. Not because it was messy, but because it felt like letting someone see a part of me I'd always kept closed. The stack of old books by my desk. The chair by the window where I usually sat when I needed quiet. The place where I'd learned how to be alone. The next day, she arrived just after sunset. My mother greeted her warmly, polite but curious, offering tea and asking simple questions. Yukino answered calmly, respectfully, slipping into the space like she belonged there. I watched from the doorway, realizing something strange. She fit. When we finally escaped to my room, she looked around slowly, taking everything in. "It's quiet," she said. "I like it that way." She nodded. "I can tell." She sat on the edge of my bed, hands folded neatly in her lap. I leaned against the desk, suddenly unsure what to do with myself. "You don't come here to hide," she said suddenly. I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "You come here to rest." The words landed gently, but they stayed. She stood up and stepped closer, her fingers brushing the spine of a book on my shelf. "You're different here," she continued. "More solid." "That's a compliment, right?" She smiled. "Very much so." The space between us closed again without either of us deciding it. She reached out, adjusting my sleeve the way she always did, her fingers lingering just a moment longer this time. I could feel the warmth of her hand through the fabric. "Rihito," she said quietly, "are you scared?" I thought about it. "Yeah," I admitted, "but not of you." She leaned in, resting her forehead against mine. "Good," she whispered. I wrapped my arms around her then, slow and careful, pulling her into a hug that felt deeper than the ones before. She relaxed into it immediately, her arms sliding around my waist, her head fitting against my shoulder like she'd done it 100 times already. We stayed like that for a while. Her fingers traced small, unconscious patterns against my back. Mine rested securely at her waist, steady, protective. "This is nice," she murmured again. "It is." She tilted her head up, just enough for our lips to brush. Not a kiss. A question. I answered it gently, closing the distance, my hand lifting slightly as if to anchor her there. The kiss was slow, unhurried, filled with trust more than urgency. When we pulled apart, she smiled softly. "I'm glad I came," she said. "So am I." Outside, the world kept moving. Cars passing, voices drifting up from the street. But inside that small room, everything felt still, grounded. And in that quiet, with her close and unafraid, I understood something that hadn't been clear before. Love wasn't loud. It didn't demand. It stayed. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't wondering how long this moment would last. I was just there, with her. The evening didn't rush us. After a while, we sat side by side on the floor, backs against the bed, sharing the quiet like it was something you could hold. She leaned into me without asking. I shifted just enough to make space, and she fit there naturally, like the shape had always been meant for her. "Your house feels warm," she said softly. "It's probably just old," I replied. She smiled. "No, it's lived in." That word again, lived in. It sounded like something you earned over time. My mother knocked once and left a plate of cut fruit by the door, without saying anything. Yukino noticed it, her expression softening. She didn't ask questions, she said. She trusts me, I answered, surprised to realize how true that felt. Yukino reached for a slice and held it out to me. Open. I laughed, then did as she said. She watched my reaction closely, like she always did, and only then took one herself. Our knees touched, stayed that way. When it grew later, she checked the time and sighed. I should go. I nodded, though I didn't want to. I'll walk you. Outside, the air was cool and quiet. Streetlights glowed softly, and the road felt smaller than usual, like it belonged to us for the moment. Rihito, she said, do you ever think about what happens next? I thought about it, about school ending someday, about choices I'd never imagined making before. I think about tomorrow, I said, and I think that's enough for now. She smiled, relieved. I like that. We stopped near her street. She turned to face me, close enough that the night felt warmer. I don't say this easily, she began, then paused. But being with you feels steady. I reached out and brushed my thumb lightly along her knuckles. You make me feel brave. She laughed softly at that, then leaned in and kissed me, gentle, lingering, unafraid. When we pulled apart, she rested her forehead against mine, breathing me in like she wanted to remember the moment. Good night, she whispered. Good night. She took a few steps back, then turned. Tomorrow? Tomorrow, I promised. As I walked home alone, the quiet didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full of plans not yet made, of mornings waiting to happen, of a warmth that stayed even after she was gone. And for once, the future didn't feel like something to fear. It felt like something to walk toward. The next day felt lighter. Not because anything dramatic had changed, but because nothing needed to. Morning sunlight spilled into the classroom as usual. Chairs scraped. Someone yawned loudly. The board still had yesterday's writing half erased. And then Yukino walked in. She didn't look around this time. She came straight to me. Morning, she said softly, setting her bag down. Morning. She sat, our shoulders touching naturally, like the space between us had already been decided. During class, she didn't pass notes today. Instead, she leaned closer once, just enough for me to hear her whisper. My mother asked about you this morning. My pen paused mid-sentence. What did she ask? She smiled slightly. If you eat properly. That caught me off guard. That's oddly specific. She worries about quiet people, Yukino said. She says they forget themselves. I glanced at her. What did you say? That you're learning not to. Something warm settled in my chest. At lunch, we sat by the window. Sunlight framed her profile, soft and unguarded. At one point, she rested her chin on her hand and watched me eat. What? I asked. You look comfortable, she said. I like that. I felt my face heat up. You're watching too closely. Then stop being interesting, she replied calmly. I had no answer for that. After school, we didn't rush anywhere. We walked slowly, stopping once to look at a stray cat lounging near a vending machine. Yukino crouched down, careful not to scare it. It's warm today, she said. That's why it's relaxed. She looked up at me. You're like that too. I laughed softly. I don't sleep in random places. No, she said, but you relax when you feel safe. As we continued walking, she slipped her hand into mine again, natural as breathing now. Rihito, she said after a while. Can I tell you something? Anything. I've always been good at reading people, she said. Predicting them, preparing for them. And me? She squeezed my hand gently. You're harder. Is that bad? No, she replied. It makes me want to stay curious. We stopped at the familiar intersection. She didn't step away this time. Instead, she leaned in and hugged me. Soft, lingering, her arms wrapping around my waist with quiet certainty. I hugged her back without hesitation. Thank you, she murmured. For what? For not asking me to explain everything, she said. For letting things be what they are. I rested my chin lightly against her hair. You don't have to explain. She pulled back just enough to look at me. Her eyes were steady. So, she said, will you come with me this weekend? My heart skipped, but not with fear this time. Yes, I said. Wherever you want to go. She smiled, bright and unguarded. Good, she said. I'll decide. As she walked away, I realized something quietly, something that felt like a turning point. I wasn't waiting to be chosen anymore. I was choosing too. And somehow, that made every step forward feel lighter. The rest of the week slipped by in small, meaningful pieces. Not milestones you could point at, just moments that quietly stacked on top of each other. Her brushing her thumb against the back of my hand when she laughed. Me reaching for her bag without thinking when her hands were full. The way we'd start walking at the same time, stop at the same time, like we were already tuned to the same rhythm. By Friday afternoon, the air itself felt expectant. She didn't say anything about the weekend again, neither did I. But when the final bell rang, she stood up and looked at me with that familiar, knowing calm. Tomorrow, she said. Tomorrow, I echoed. Not because I was nervous, because I was curious. She texted me the next morning with a simple message. Meet me at the station, 10. No explanation. That was her way. When I arrived, she was already there, standing near the ticket machines, sunlight catching in her hair. She wasn't dressed up, just comfortable, effortless. She noticed me immediately. You're on time, she said. I didn't want to keep you waiting. She smiled. I wouldn't have minded. We bought tickets without talking about where we were going. When the train arrived, she took the window seat again, patting the empty spot beside her. The city slowly gave way to quieter streets, then trees, then open sky. You're not asking, she said after a while. Where we're going? She nodded. I trust you. That made her glance at me, surprised, then pleased. I used to come here when I needed to think, she said, when things felt loud. The train slowed to a stop at a small station I'd never been to. We walked for a few minutes before reaching a wide riverbank. The water moved slowly, reflecting the sky in soft, broken patterns. A few people sat scattered along the edge, reading, talking quietly, existing. This is my place, she said. It's calm, I replied. She looked at me. That's why I brought you. We sat on the grass, close enough that our shoulders touched. She leaned back on her hands, face tilted toward the sky. Do you know, she said, you're the first person I've brought here? I turned to her. Why me? She didn't answer right away. Because, she said finally, you don't try to change the quiet. That felt like a gift. A breeze passed through, cool and gentle. Without thinking, she rested her head against my shoulder. The weight of it was light, but it anchored me completely. I stayed still, letting her. After a while, she shifted, turning her face toward me. Close enough that I could see the faint freckles near her eyes. The way her lashes cast shadows against her cheeks. Rihito, she said softly. Yes? I'm glad I met you. The words were simple, but they landed deeper than anything else had. I lifted my hand and brushed a strand of hair away from her face. Slow and careful, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. She didn't. Instead, she leaned in. The kiss this time wasn't tentative. It wasn't rushed either. It was warm, steady, unafraid. When we pulled back, she stayed close, forehead resting against mine, her fingers lightly curled into my sleeve. You're not disappearing, she murmured. I smiled. Neither are you. We stayed there until the light began to soften, until the world gently reminded us that time still moved. As we walked back toward the station hand in hand, I realized something with quiet certainty. This wasn't a peak. It wasn't a dramatic high point meant to fade. It was a foundation, And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of building on it. The shift happened the following week. Not between us, around us. Exams were announced on Monday morning, written in thick chalk across the board like a warning. Groans filled the classroom. Desks shifted. Someone complained too loudly. I didn't react much. Tests had always been something I dealt with alone. Yukino did react. Not outwardly, but I noticed the way her pen paused, the way she stared at the board a second longer than necessary. After class, while everyone else rushed out, she stayed seated. "You're staying?" I asked. She nodded. "I need to plan." "For?" "Everything," she said calmly, then quieter. "This term matters." That was new. I sat back down. We studied together that afternoon, not side by side like before, but across from each other. Notebooks open, silence broken only by the scratch of pens and the occasional sigh. It felt different, focused, serious. At one point she looked up and said, "You don't look stressed." "I just don't show it well." She studied me. "You don't show a lot of things." "Not anymore," I said. "At least, not with you." She didn't smile this time. She nodded. That night, I realized something uncomfortable. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about where we were going. A few days later, she finally said it. We were walking home, the sky already dark, streetlights reflecting off wet pavement. "I might be transferring schools next year," she said. I stopped walking. "What?" She kept going for 2 steps before realizing I wasn't beside her. Then she turned. "My mother's job," she explained. "There's a possibility. Nothing decided yet." My chest felt tight. "Oh," she watched my reaction closely. "You're quiet." "I'm thinking." "That scares me more than if you said something," she admitted. I stepped closer. "When were you going to tell me?" I asked, not accusing, just honest. "I didn't know how," she said. "I didn't want this to become heavy." "This is heavy," I said, "but I'd rather know." She exhaled slowly. "I didn't want you to feel like this had an expiration date." I shook my head. "It doesn't." Her eyes searched mine. "You don't know that." "No," I said, "but I know this." I reached for her hand. She let me. "We don't disappear just because something might change," I continued. "We talk. We decide. Together." She looked stunned. Not emotional, just caught off guard. "That sounds like something someone confident would say," she murmured. "I'm not confident," I replied. "I'm choosing." That word again. She tightened her grip on my hand. We didn't talk much after that, but the silence felt different from before. Intentional. The next day at school, she pulled me aside during lunch. "I thought about what you said," she told me. "And I've always decided things on my own," she said, "prepared for outcomes instead of people." She paused. "I don't want to do that this time." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," she continued, "that whatever happens next year, I don't want to plan it without you knowing." I smiled faintly. "That's all I wanted." She shook her head. "No, it's more than that." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I want to call you my boyfriend." Just like that. Clear, direct, no testing. The hallway noise faded. "Okay," I said, smiling, before I could stop myself. She laughed softly, relieved. "Good," she said, "because I already thought of you that way." That evening, when she walked beside me, she didn't hesitate. Her hand slid into mine openly, not caring who saw. And for the first time, I understood something important. Love wasn't just closeness, it was direction. And even if the path ahead was uncertain, we were finally walking it with our eyes open. Once we stopped pretending, the world responded faster than I expected. By the next morning, it was obvious. Because we didn't correct them anymore. When Yukino arrived at school, she didn't pause before sitting next to me. When I stood up, she stood with me. When someone greeted her, their eyes flicked to me automatically, waiting to see if I belonged there. I did. At lunch, a girl from another class leaned over and asked, half smiling, "So, is it true?" Yukino answered before I could. Yes. Just that. No explanation. No defense. The girl blinked, laughed softly and said, I see, before walking away. I exhaled without realizing I'd been holding my breath. You okay? Yukino asked. I nodded. Yeah, just getting used to it. She smiled. Me too. What changed most wasn't how people looked at us, it was how we moved. We no longer checked for permission, no longer hesitated before small things. Her hand would find mine in the hallway. My arm would settle naturally around her shoulders when we sat somewhere crowded. If she leaned against me, I stayed still, instead of stiffening. One afternoon, while we were studying in the library, she fell asleep against my shoulder. I noticed it slowly, the weight, the warmth, the way her breathing evened out. I didn't move. My arm ached. I didn't care. A librarian glanced over, clearly about to say something, then stopped when she saw Yukino asleep and me holding a finger to my lips. She smiled and walked away. When Yukino woke up a few minutes later, she froze. Did I fall asleep? I nodded. Her cheeks warmed. Why didn't you wake me? Because you looked peaceful. She stared at me for a second. Then she leaned back down, resting her head there again. Then don't move, she said quietly. That was the moment I understood something new. Being together wasn't loud, it was permission. The real challenge came a few days later. After school, while we were walking home, she slowed down again, that familiar signal. My mother wants to meet you, she said. I stopped. Meet me? Yes. When? This weekend. As in, officially? She nodded. As in, seriously. My heart raced, not fear, but wait. This wasn't whispers or glances, this was real, adult, permanent in a way school never was. She noticed immediately. You don't have to say yes right now, she added. I just wanted to tell you. I looked at her, at the way she waited instead of deciding for me. I'll come, I said. Her eyes widened slightly. Are you sure? I smiled. You stood beside me when people talked. I can do the same. She exhaled, relieved, then stepped closer and hugged me, tight this time, arms wrapped fully around my back. Thank you, she whispered into my shoulder. For what? For not disappearing when things get real. I hugged her back, steady. I'm not going anywhere. As we stood there, holding each other in the quiet of the evening street, I realized something important. This wasn't the climax. This was the middle. The point where love stops being just feeling and starts becoming choice. And even though the road ahead was uncertain, I wasn't walking it alone anymore. I was walking it with her. That weekend arrived faster than I expected. I spent all of Saturday morning pretending I was calm. I wasn't. By the time I stood in front of Yukino's house again, my palms were damp, and my thoughts were running ahead of me, imagining every possible way this could go wrong. She noticed immediately. You're thinking too much, she said softly as she opened the gate. I'm meeting your mother, I replied. I think that's allowed. She smiled faintly and stepped closer, straightening my collar with practiced ease. She's not scary, Yukino said. She's just perceptive. That somehow didn't help. Inside, the house was quiet, clean, orderly. It felt similar to Yukino herself. Nothing unnecessary, everything intentional. Her mother was already in the living room. She stood up when we entered. She looked younger than I expected. Calm eyes, gentle posture, the kind of person who didn't need to raise her voice to be heard. So this is Rihito, she said, not a question. Yes, Yukino replied. This is him. I bowed quickly. Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me. She studied me for a moment, long enough that I became very aware of my breathing. Then she smiled. Please, sit, she said. You don't need to look so tense. Yukino sat beside me on the couch, close enough that our knees touched. That was deliberate. Her mother noticed. So, she said as she poured tea, how long have you two been together? Yukino answered calmly. Not long, but seriously. Her mother nodded as if that confirmed something. And you? She asked, turning to me. What do you think of my daughter? The question was direct. No trap in it. Just honesty. I swallowed once and answered carefully. She's thoughtful, I said. She notices things people miss. She doesn't rush others, but she knows what she wants. And she's kinder than she lets on. Yukino looked at me. Really looked at me. Her mother watched that reaction closely. I see, she said. She set the teacups down gently. Rihito, she continued, my daughter has always been independent. People misunderstand her often. They see what's on the surface and stop there. I know, I replied. I did too, at first. And now? Now I try to listen more than I assume. Her mother smiled slightly at that. That's good, she said, because listening is harder than liking. She turned to Yukino. You've changed, she said simply. Yukino didn't deny it. I know. Do you regret it? No. Not a second of hesitation. Her mother nodded once, satisfied. Then she turned back to me. I won't ask you to promise anything, she said. You're both young. Life will pull you in directions you can't predict. She paused. But I will ask you this. When things become inconvenient, she said calmly, will you talk to her instead of leaving? The room felt very still. Yes, I said. Even if it's uncomfortable. She held my gaze for a long moment. Then she smiled. Warm, genuine. That's all I needed to hear. Yukino let out a breath she'd been holding. Her mother stood up. Stay for dinner, she said. You're welcome here. Yukino looked at me, a question in her eyes. I smiled. I'd like that. Later, when we walked out together under the evening sky, Yukino stopped and took my hand. You did well, she said quietly. I was terrified. She laughed softly. I know. She leaned in and rested her head against my shoulder. Just for a moment. Thank you for taking me seriously, she said. I squeezed her hand gently. Thank you for trusting me too. As we walked on, side by side, I realized something important. This wasn't just about young love anymore. It was about being seen by the people who mattered, and not turning away. And for the first time, that didn't feel like pressure. It felt like belonging. That night, after I got home, the house felt quieter than usual. Not empty, just still. My mother asked how it went while setting plates on the table. My father glanced up from his phone, waiting without asking. It was nice, I said. That was enough. They didn't push. They never did. Later, lying in bed, I thought about Yukino's house. The way everything there felt deliberate. Not cold, just controlled. Clean lines, quiet voices. The kind of place where emotions weren't suppressed, just handled carefully. That was Yukino. She wasn't distant because she didn't care. She was distant because she'd learned early that being composed kept things from falling apart. And me? I'd learned the opposite. That if I stayed quiet, stayed small, stayed agreeable, nothing would demand too much from me. Somewhere between those two ways of living, we'd met. At school the next day, nothing dramatic happened. And that, somehow, mattered more. Yukino arrived at her usual time. She sat beside me like she always did now. No hesitation, no announcement, just presence. Did you sleep? She asked quietly. Yeah, you? A little. She glanced at me, then added, my mother liked you. I raised an eyebrow. Liked? She doesn't say that, Yukino replied, but she asked if you made it home safely. That landed deeper than praise. During class, I noticed small things. How Yukino listened more than she spoke. How teachers trusted her without question. How classmates didn't interrupt her. Not because she demanded respect, but because she never wasted words. She noticed things about me too. When I drifted off, she nudged my notebook back into place. When I answered a question out loud, She watched my reaction more than the class did, checking if I was uncomfortable, not impressed. That was new. At lunch, Sato, one of the few people I'd known since middle school, sat down across from me. "So," he said, glancing between us, "this is real now?" Yukino didn't answer. "Yes." Sato blinked, then laughed. "Huh, didn't expect that." Neither did I, but I didn't feel the need to explain. After school, Yukino and I walked home together like we always did. At the intersection, she stopped. "Rihito," she said, facing me fully. "Do you feel pressured?" I thought about it honestly. "No," I said. "I feel involved." She nodded. "That's good. I don't want to be something that overwhelms you." "You're not," I replied. "You're something I choose." She went quiet at that. Then she stepped closer, not rushed, not shy, and took my hand. "I'm not very good at needing people," she said. "I'm not very good at being needed," I answered. She smiled faintly. "Then we'll learn." She leaned in and kissed me, soft, brief, unforced. Not to confirm anything, just because she wanted to. As she walked away, I didn't feel the urge to replay the moment or question it. It fit. And that was how I knew this wasn't drifting. Not a dramatic story about two people colliding, but a quieter one, about two people who grew up learning how to stand alone, deciding carefully, consciously, to stand side by side. The week moved forward with a new kind of weight. Not heavy enough to crush anything, just enough to remind us that what we were building now had edges, shape, consequence. It showed up first in small places. A teacher asking Yukino to represent the class at an inter-school meeting. A counselor pulling me aside to talk about post-graduation plans, forms, deadlines, conversations that all quietly asked the same thing. What are you doing next? After school one day, Yukino stayed behind to talk to a teacher. I waited outside the classroom, leaning against the railing, watching students pass by in pairs and groups. For the first time in a while, I was alone. It didn't feel bad, but it did feel noticeable. When she finally came out, her expression was thoughtful. "Everything okay?" She nodded. "Just responsibilities." We walked in silence for a bit. Then she spoke again. "They want me to apply for a recommendation," she said. "A competitive one." "That's good, right?" "It is," she agreed. "But it means interviews, preparations, less free time." I glanced at her. "You're worried about us." She didn't deny it. "I don't want you to feel like you're being left behind," she said carefully. The words were gentle, but I knew how much they cost her to say. "I won't," I replied. "But I also don't want to be something you have to manage." She stopped walking, turned to face me fully. "I don't see you that way," she said. "I'm just not used to wanting to protect something that can walk away on its own." That made me smile a little. "I'm not fragile," I said. "I just move quietly." She studied my face for a moment, then nodded, then promised me something. "What?" "Don't disappear into quiet if things get complicated," she said. "Talk to me." I thought about how easy it would be to retreat, how familiar it was. Then I nodded. "Only if you promise not to carry everything alone." She smiled. Small, sincere, deal. That weekend she came over again, not as an event, just as part of the day. She sat at the kitchen table with my mother, talking about school in calm, measured tones. She helped dry dishes without being asked. When my father asked her opinion on something trivial, she answered honestly, instead of politely. Later in my room, she noticed the stack of old notebooks by my desk. "You keep everything," she said. "Only what mattered at the time." She picked one up, flipped through a few pages, then closed it gently. "You don't give yourself enough credit," she said. "You've been paying attention longer than you think." I shrugged. "I just never thought it was important." She stepped closer. "It is," she said, "especially now." We sat together on the floor again, backs against the bed, knees touching. No rush, no urgency, just closeness that didn't need to prove anything. "I don't know exactly where I'll end up next year," she said quietly. "I don't either," I replied. She looked at me. "Does that scare you?" I considered it. "It used to," I said. "Now it just feels unfinished." She leaned her head against my shoulder. I like unfinished, she murmured. It means we're still choosing. That night, after she left, I understood something clearly for the first time. This wasn't a story about obstacles pulling us apart. It was about learning how to move forward without losing ourselves. And that kind of story doesn't rush. It asks you to stay present, to speak when it's easier to stay quiet, to choose, again and again, without guarantees. And for once, that didn't feel like pressure. It felt like growth. And the first real crack didn't come from doubt. It came from timing. 2 weeks later, Yukino showed me the email during lunch. Just slid her phone across the table, like she always did when something mattered. Interview invitation. Saturday, 9:00 a.m., downtown. I read it twice. That's great, I said honestly. She watched my face carefully, like she was looking for what I wasn't saying. It's the same day, she added, as your entrance exam practice. I paused. Right. The mock exam I'd signed up for months ago. The one my counselor said would set the tone for my applications. We sat there, surrounded by noise, suddenly very quiet. I can reschedule mine, I said finally. She shook her head immediately. No. I can take it another week. And I can't redo that interview, she replied. Not sharply, just firmly. I nodded. I know. Neither of us was wrong. That was the problem. That afternoon, we walked home slower than usual. I don't want this to turn into us sacrificing things for each other, she said eventually. I don't want it to turn into us pretending it doesn't matter, I replied. She stopped walking, turned to face me. This is what I was afraid of, she said quietly. Conflict, I asked. No, she said. Avoidance. That landed. I took a breath. Then let's not avoid it. She waited. We do our own things on Saturday, I said. We meet after. We talk about how it went. No guilt. No keeping score. She searched my face. And if one of us needs support during the day, then we text, I said. Not to fix anything, just to remind each other we're not alone. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. That sounds reasonable, she said. I smiled. I've been practicing. She laughed softly, the tension easing just enough. Saturday came faster than either of us expected. We stood at the station together early that morning, heading in opposite directions for once. She adjusted her bag strap. I straightened my jacket. Don't overthink your answers, I said. She smirked. That's rich, coming from you. You know what I mean. She nodded. Rihito. Yeah? She stepped closer and hugged me. Quick, firm, grounding. Do your best, she said. Not for me, for you. I hugged her back. You too. Then she pulled away and walked toward her train without looking back. I watched until she disappeared. For the first time, separation didn't feel like distance. It felt like trust. My exam went fine. Not perfect, not disastrous, enough that I walked out knowing I hadn't run. That mattered more than the score. I checked my phone. One message. Yukino. Finished. Still shaking. But I think it went okay. I smiled and typed back. Proud of you. Want to get dinner? 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Yes. We met at a small place near the river. Neither of us particularly hungry at first. We talked slowly, carefully, like we were unpacking something fragile but shared. She told me about the questions they asked. I told her about the parts I struggled with. We listened. At one point, she reached across the table and took my hand. Thank you, she said. For what? For not trying to save me, she replied. For trusting me to stand on my own. I squeezed her fingers gently. Thank you for letting me do the same. We walked home together after, the city quiet around us. No big declarations, no dramatic turning point. Just 2 people who'd chosen not to disappear when things got complicated. And as we crossed the bridge, lights reflecting on the water below, I realized something important. We weren't progressing because things were easy. We were progressing because we were learning how to move forward, without pulling each other apart. And that, more than romance, more than comfort, felt like the beginning of something lasting. The results didn't come immediately, and that waiting, quiet, unglamorous, was where everything really changed. We went back to school on Monday like nothing special had happened. Same desks, same teachers, same schedule. But now there was something unfinished hanging between us. Something neither of us could rush. Yukino didn't bring it up. Neither did I. That was intentional. Instead, we focused on what was in front of us. We studied together in the evenings, sometimes at my place, sometimes at hers. When we got tired, we took breaks without calling them breaks. She'd rest her head against my shoulder while scrolling on her phone. I'd lie on the floor, listening to the sound of her pen moving across paper. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we didn't. Both felt right. One evening, while we were walking home, she said, "You've stopped apologizing so much." I blinked. "Have I?" She nodded. "You used to say sorry for taking space, for needing time, for existing." I thought about it. "I guess I don't feel like I'm in the way anymore," I said. She smiled softly. "You never were." That stayed with me. The email came on a Thursday. She saw it first. I could tell, the moment her phone buzzed, because she froze, just slightly, before picking it up. Her eyes scanned the screen once. Then again. I didn't ask. I waited. She looked up at me slowly. "I got in," she said. Just 3 words, but her voice shook. I stood up without thinking and hugged her. She laughed into my shoulder, breath unsteady, arms wrapping around me tightly, like she was anchoring herself. "You did it," I said. "We did," she corrected quietly. She pulled back just enough to look at me. "I wouldn't have applied if you hadn't told me not to disappear," she admitted. I smiled. "I just told you not to avoid." She nodded. "Same thing." That night, she stayed longer than usual. We sat on the bed, legs stretched out, backs against the wall. The room was quiet, except for the sound of traffic far away. "This changes things," she said eventually. "Yes," I replied, "but not everything." She turned to face me. "What do you want now?" she asked. The question wasn't heavy. It was honest. I thought about it carefully. "I want to finish school," I said. "I want to apply somewhere I don't hate. I want to keep choosing you without it feeling like I'm borrowing time." Her expression softened. "That sounds steady," she said. I smiled. "You make me like steady." She leaned in and kissed me. Not urgently, not playfully, just warmly, like it belonged there. When we pulled apart, she rested her forehead against mine. "I'll be busier," she said. "There will be days I can't give you everything." "I don't need everything," I replied. "I just need you to come back." "Is that bad?" "No," I said too fast. She smiled. Victory. A few rows ahead, Sato turned around. "Hey, you two." Yukino immediately withdrew her hand and sat properly, expression perfectly composed. "What?" she asked. Sato blinked. "Nothing." I stared at my notebook. I had written nothing, just a long, crooked line. At lunch, she escalated. I was halfway through my meal when she suddenly reached across the table, without warning, without explanation, and wiped the corner of my mouth again. Same spot as last time. Her thumb lingered for half a second. "Sauce," she said. I froze. Everyone at the table froze. Sato slowly leaned back. "Am I interrupting something?" Yukino looked at him calmly. "Yes." He immediately stood up. "I'm going to sit somewhere else." As he fled, Yukino finally looked at me. "You didn't thank me," she said. "Thank you." She nodded, satisfied, and went back to eating like she hadn't just publicly ruined my soul. After school, things somehow got worse. It started raining again, forcing everyone to crowd under the covered walkway. Yukino and I ended up pressed together by sheer lack of space. her back against my chest, not fully, just enough. I was very aware of where my hands were. I kept them firmly at my sides, like they were dangerous weapons. "You're tense," she said quietly. "There are reasons." She glanced up at me. "I won't bite." "That's not reassuring." She laughed softly, clearly enjoying this far too much. Then, the crowd shifted. Someone bumped into her. She stumbled back, straight into me. Her hands grabbed my sleeves instinctively. My hands, unfortunately, reacted faster than my brain and landed at her waist to steady her. The world stopped. Her breath hitched. Mine did too. Slowly, she turned her head just enough to look at me. "You did that on purpose," she said. "I swear on my life I did not." She studied my face for a second, then smiled. "Good," she said, "because if you had, I'd be embarrassed." "You're not?" "A little," she admitted, "but I don't hate it." That was the moment I realized she wasn't teasing anymore. She was testing how much I could handle, how much I'd stay present instead of panicking. And terrifyingly, I was still standing. When the rain eased, she stepped away first, but before she did, she leaned back just enough to whisper, "You're improving." "At what?" "At not running." She walked ahead, umbrella opening above her, leaving me soaked, flustered, and painfully aware of my heartbeat. That night, I stared at my ceiling and accepted a dangerous truth. Yukino Yoshikawa was no longer just walking beside me. She was pushing my boundaries. Not cruelly, not recklessly, but deliberately. And instead of being scared, I wanted to see what would happen next. The moment Rihito Takasuki realized something had changed was when he stopped panicking. Not because Yukino stopped teasing him, because his body stopped freezing. It happened during cleaning duty. Completely ordinary, completely unfair. The classroom was mostly empty, late afternoon sunlight spilling across the desks. Yukino was wiping the board, sleeves rolled up, hair tied loosely. Rihito was gathering chairs, trying very hard not to stare. "Rihito," Yukino said casually, without turning around, "you're stacking those wrong." "I'm not," he replied. She glanced over her shoulder. "You are." He sighed and adjusted the chairs. She walked closer to inspect them. Too close, as usual. "If you align." She leaned forward. Her skirt brushed his leg. She didn't notice. He did. Something in him, finally, clicked. Before he could overthink it, before fear could kick in, he said calmly, "Yukino." "Yes, you're doing it again." She paused. "Doing what?" "Standing too close." She blinked. "Once, twice." "I am?" "Yes," he said evenly. "And if you don't step back, people might misunderstand." Silence. Actual silence. She stared at him. Her ears slowly turned red. "That's," she started, then stopped. She took one step back, then another. "You noticed?" she said quietly. "I've been noticing for a while," he replied. "I just stopped pretending I didn't." For the first time since this all started, Yukino Yoshikawa didn't have a comeback. She turned away abruptly, pretending to wipe a perfectly clean section of the board. "That's unfair," she muttered. Rihito smiled. Just a little. The victory lasted exactly one day, because the next morning, Yukino walked into class and saw something she did not like. Rihito was talking to a girl she didn't recognize. She was laughing, lightly, too lightly. Yukino froze in the doorway. The girl leaned against Rihito's desk, smiling as she spoke. Rihito looked normal, relaxed, not flustered, not panicking. That was worse. Yukino sat down sharply, a little too sharply. Rihito turned. "Morning." "Morning," she replied. Her tone was flat, dangerously flat. Class started. "Didn't whisper," Didn't tease. Didn't look at him. That was terrifying. At break, Rihito finally asked, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," she said immediately. She was not fine. "Who was that?" she added, far too casually. "Oh," he said. "That's Arai. She transferred from another class. She was asking about notes." Yukino nodded. Once, then said, "I see." That was it. No reaction, no drama. Which meant the drama was internal. At lunch, she sat across from him instead of beside him. At one point, Arai waved at Rihito from another table. Rihito waved back politely. Yukino stabbed her rice a little too hard. Snap. The chopsticks broke. She stared at them. Huh. Rihito stared too. "Did you just break chopsticks? They were cheap," she said coldly. He slowly reached across the table and handed her his. "Here." She took them. Their fingers brushed. She didn't pull away. Instead, she looked up at him. "Do you like talking to her?" The question came out quieter than expected. More honest. Rihito blinked. "Who?" "Arai." "No," he said immediately. "Why would I?" She looked away. "Just asking." "You're terrible at just asking," he said gently. That made her freeze. He leaned closer, careful, calm, deliberate. "You don't have to compete," he continued. "I'm already here." She looked back at him. Really looked. "You noticed again," she said softly. He nodded. "I'm paying attention now." For a moment, she looked embarrassed. Then annoyed. Then relieved. She leaned forward suddenly, forehead nearly touching his. "Then listen carefully," she whispered. "Yes? I don't like sharing." His heart skipped. "That's intense." "I know," she replied. "I'm working on it." Then she leaned back, picked up her food, and added calmly, "So stop letting other girls lean on your desk." "I didn't let her." "Then we won't have a problem." Rihito stared at her. She glanced sideways. "Why are you looking at me like that?" He smiled. "I think you're cute when you're jealous." She choked. Actually choked. Rihito Takasuki. Too late. He'd finally learned how to hit back. And judging by the way her face was burning, she wasn't ready for that at all. Yukino did not recover quickly. That alone should have scared Rihito. Because when Yukino Yoshikawa didn't retaliate immediately, it meant she was planning something. He realized this during PE, specifically when teams were announced. Pair up. Before Rihito could even look around, Yukino grabbed his wrist. Firm, no hesitation. "You're with me." Her tone allowed no discussion. Several heads turned. Rihito swallowed. "We're doing badminton." "Yes," she said calmly. "That's correct." She positioned herself far too close for a sport that required swinging rackets. Their shoulders brushed. Her elbow touched his side every time she served. On purpose. "You're going to hit me," he muttered. "Only emotionally," she replied. He missed the first return, then the second, then the third. "Rihito," she said sweetly, "are you distracted?" "No," he said quickly, "just concerned for my safety." She smiled. That was worse. Halfway through the match, the shuttlecock dropped between them. Both reached for it. Both stopped. They were standing inches apart. Her hand brushed his. Static. Actual static. Someone coughed loudly nearby. "Get a room," a voice muttered. Yukino turned immediately. Calm smile. "This is a room," she said. "A gym." Laughter broke out. Rihito wanted to evaporate. After class, she acted like nothing happened. That was the most unsettling part. The real disaster came after school. The cultural committee had called a short meeting in the auditorium. Students filled the seats in loose clusters, chatting loudly. Rihito sat near the aisle. Yukino sat beside him. Then, unfortunately, Arai sat on his other side. "Hey," Arai said casually, "mind if I sit here?" No," Rihito replied. Yukino went still. very still. The meeting dragged on. Announcements, deadlines, boring things. Arai leaned slightly toward Rihito to whisper something. Yukino snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically. She stood up, in the middle of the auditorium. "Rihito," she said clearly. The entire row looked at her. "Yes," he replied weakly. "Sit with me." "We are sitting." Yukino turned and looked at her, just once. Arai stopped talking. Rihito stood immediately and moved seats. The room buzzed. Someone whispered, "Whoa!" Yukino sat back down like she hadn't just asserted dominance over public seating arrangements. Rihito leaned toward her. That was bold. She leaned closer. "I warned you," she whispered. "I don't like sharing." His face felt warm. I know," she interrupted. "This isn't about fault." "Then what is it about?" She glanced at him sideways, eyes sharp but embarrassed. "Boundaries," she said. "I'm bad at them." That honesty hit harder than the jealousy. Later, walking home, she was quiet, not angry, thinking. Rihito finally said, "You don't have to compete." She stopped walking. "That's why I'm annoyed with myself." She took a breath. "I don't like feeling possessive," she continued. "It's new and uncomfortable." He nodded slowly. "You're allowed to feel it. Just don't fight it alone." She looked at him, really looked, then suddenly stepped forward and hugged him. Right there on the sidewalk, tight, buried her face into his chest. "I hate that you make me feel seen when I don't want to be," she muttered. He hugged her back without hesitation. "I hate that I like it," she added. He smiled softly. "Same." She pulled back, cheeks red, then jabbed his chest lightly. "And don't smile like that." "Like what?" "Like you're proud." "I am," he said. She stared, then laughed despite herself. "You're dangerous now. You taught me." They walked the rest of the way closer than usual, shoulders brushing, fingers occasionally tangling. And for the first time, Rihito realized something important. This wasn't just flirting anymore. They were learning each other's worst edges, and choosing to stay anyway. The rumor started the next morning. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, which made it worse. Rihito noticed it in the pauses, conversations stopping when he walked past, phones being tilted just slightly away. A few people glancing at Yukino, and then at him, like they were trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. By lunch, he heard it clearly for the first time. So, apparently Yoshikawa's really controlling. The words weren't meant for him, but they landed anyway. He froze for half a second, then kept walking, like he hadn't heard a thing. Yukino noticed. She always did, said once they sat down. "I'm thinking." "That's never a good sign," she replied lightly. He looked at her. "People are talking." Her chopsticks paused mid-air. "About us?" "About you," he said carefully. She exhaled slowly. "I thought so." She didn't look upset, she looked tired. "I didn't mean to make a scene yesterday," she said. I know," he interrupted. "You don't have to explain." That made her look at him sharply. "They're saying I'm possessive," she said flatly. "That I'm pressuring you." Rihito felt something twist in his chest. That's not true. But rumors don't care. For the first time since he'd known her, Yukino didn't look composed. She looked uncertain. That did it. He stood up. "What are you doing?" she asked. He reached down and took her hand. "We're eating somewhere else. Trust me." The cafeteria quieted as they walked out together. He didn't look around, didn't check who was watching. He just walked. They ended up on the stairwell landing between floors. Quiet, empty, echoing slightly. Yukino finally spoke. "You don't have to defend me," she said softly. "I can handle rumors." "I know you can," he replied, "but you shouldn't have to." She stared at him. "You're not angry," she said. "You're steady." "I'm angry," he admitted. "Just not at you." He took a breath. They can say whatever they want, he continued. But if they think you're controlling me, that means they think I don't have a choice. Her eyes softened. And I do, he said. I choose you, every day. Silence filled the stairwell. Then she laughed quietly, half relieved, half overwhelmed. You're unfair, she said. You know that? You said that already. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You're doing this in public, she pointed out. He shrugged. Let them misunderstand the right thing. She shook her head, smiling despite herself. Then very deliberately, she stood on her toes and kissed him. Not long, not hidden, just enough. When she pulled back, her composure was back, but warmer now. Okay, she said, then let's stop pretending. The rest of the day felt different, not because the rumor stopped, but because neither of them bent around it. Yukino walked beside him openly. Rihito didn't flinch when people stared. When someone asked him directly, "Are you okay with this?" he answered simply, "Yes." That night, as they walked home together, Yukino spoke quietly. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For letting me be flawed," she replied, "and not leaving." He squeezed her hand. "You don't scare me." She smiled, leaning into him slightly, "because I'm not done being difficult." He laughed softly. "I figured." And as they walked on, rumors trailing behind them, evening settling around them, Rihito realized something had shifted again. This wasn't just attraction. This wasn't just comfort. This was alignment. And whatever came next, he wasn't going to step back. He was going to step forward. The announcement came on Friday afternoon. Not a rumor. Not a misunderstanding. An official notice. The homeroom teacher cleared her throat and tapped the board. Next month, there will be a 3-day inter-school program. Selected students will attend lectures, group projects, and stay overnight at a partnered academy. A low buzz filled the classroom. Rihito barely reacted, until he heard Yukino's name. Yoshikawa Yukino. She didn't look surprised. She never did. Then, Takasuki Rihito. The room went quiet. Rihito froze. He felt it before he understood it. Dozens of eyes turning at once. The teacher adjusted her glasses. You'll both be representing this class. Details will be handed out later. The bell rang. No one moved. Yukino slowly turned toward him. Did you apply? She asked quietly. No, he answered. Neither did I. That was unsettling. After class, the teacher explained it plainly. Grades, recommendations, compatibility scores. You work well under pressure, she told Rihito. And you balance Yoshikawa-san. Balance. The words stayed with him. The reality hit that evening. 3 days, overnight stay, group projects, shared evaluations. This wasn't just school life anymore. This was a fork in the road. They sat together on the embankment by the river again, wind cool against their backs. This isn't optional, Yukino said. No, Rihito replied. It's not. She was quiet for a long moment. People will watch us, she added. Other schools. I know. And they'll judge us separately, she continued. And together. That was the real issue. Rihito looked at her. Are you worried about how we look? He asked, or about what this could change? She met his gaze. Both. That was honest. For the first time, this wasn't about comfort or jealousy or rumors. It was about direction. If they went, they'd be tested individually. If they didn't, doors would quietly close. Yukino exhaled. I don't want to be something that holds you back, she said. Rihito frowned slightly. I was just thinking the same thing, he replied. She blinked. You were? I don't want to hide behind you, he said. I want to see what I'm like when I have to stand on my own. That surprised her. Good. After a moment, she nodded. Then we do this properly, she said. as partners, not a unit. He smiled faintly. Agreed. The next week shifted the tone completely. Preparation meetings, individual assignments, separate study groups. For the first time since they'd gotten close, they weren't always together. And that was the point. Yukino thrived, calm, efficient, respected. Rihito struggled at first, unfamiliar groups, louder personalities, but he didn't retreat. He adapted, and Yukino noticed. One evening after a long prep session, she said quietly, "You don't need me as much anymore." He considered it. "I still want you," he said, "but I don't need to disappear into you." Her expression softened. "That's exactly what I hoped you'd say." She leaned in and kissed him, not playful, not teasing. Proud. The trip was set. 3 days that would change how they were seen, and more importantly, how they saw themselves. This wasn't repetition anymore. This was movement. The bus ride was the first real separation. They didn't sit together, not because they couldn't, because they chose not to. Yukino took a seat near the front with other representatives, already discussing schedules. Calm, focused, in her element. Rihito sat halfway back, surrounded by people he barely knew from other classes. Louder voices, faster jokes, the kind of energy that used to make him fade out. Used to. The bus pulled onto the highway. For a moment, he glanced forward. Yukino wasn't looking at him, and strangely, that felt right. The academy was bigger than he expected. Modern buildings, open courtyards, students in different uniforms moving with practiced confidence. This wasn't just a trip. It was a preview of what came next. Orientation split them, immediately. Different projects. Rihito's group focused on problem-solving tasks, presentations, debates, leadership exercises. The kind of thing he'd normally avoid. The instructor smiled too easily. "Speak up," she said. "No one's invisible here." That stung. But he didn't retreat. He spoke. Not loudly, not confidently, but clearly. And when he finished, the room didn't move on immediately. Someone nodded. Someone asked a follow-up. That was new. That evening, they finally crossed paths again in the courtyard. No crowd, no teachers, just the hum of lights and distant voices. Yukino spotted him first. "You're late," she said. He smiled. "I didn't get lost." "I didn't say you did." They walked side by side, not touching, just close enough to feel grounded again. "How was your group?" she asked. "Hard," he admitted. "But I didn't hate it." She glanced at him. "That's progress." He looked at her. "You?" She hesitated. "Everyone expects me to lead," she said. "I can. I just don't want that to be the only thing I'm good at." That honesty surprised him. "You're allowed to be more than what people expect," he said. She smiled faintly. "You're quoting me now. Guess I learned something." They stopped under a tree lit from below, shadows dancing across the leaves. For a second, neither spoke. Then Yukino said quietly, "I'm glad you're here. Even if we're not attached at the hip?" "Especially because of that." She reached out, not to hold his hand, but to straighten the strap of his bag. Intimate, brief, grounded. The second day raised the stakes. Mixed school groups, new faces, and someone who didn't look at Yukino with admiration, but with challenge. His name was Kanzaki. Confident, sharp, too observant. He approached Rihito after a session. "You're Yoshikawa's boyfriend," he said flatly. Rihito didn't flinch. "Yes." Kanzaki tilted his head. "Interesting. You're quieter than I expected." "So are you," Rihito replied calmly. Kanzaki laughed. "Fair. Don't slow her down." Rihito met his gaze. "I'm not walking behind her," he said. "I'm walking beside her." Kanzaki studied him, then nodded once. Good answer. And walked away. That night, Yukino found him by the vending machines. You met Kanzaki, she said. I did. He tests people, she added. Rihito shrugged. So do you. She laughed softly. Then, unexpectedly, she stepped closer and hugged him. Quick, tight, grounding. Thank you, she murmured. For what? For not shrinking. He returned the hug, steady and sure. For not needing me to save you, she added. He smiled against her hair. We're doing this right. Back in their rooms, separated by walls and quiet. Rihito lay awake, not anxious, not overwhelmed. Aware. This trip wasn't pulling them apart. It was showing them who they were becoming. And when the final day came, there would be no going back to who they were before. Only forward. Together, but not dependent. The final day began earlier than the others. The campus was quiet in that way places get right before something important happens, like the air itself was waiting. Rihito stood outside the main hall with his group, notes folded in his pocket, listening to voices overlap around him without really hearing them. He wasn't nervous the way he used to be. He was alert. That was different. Inside, the evaluation was simple on paper and heavy in reality. Present, defend, respond. When his turn came, he stepped forward without looking for Yukino, without checking if she was watching. He spoke slowly, choosing clarity over confidence, answering questions without shrinking when challenged. When someone interrupted him, he didn't stop. When someone disagreed, he didn't fold. By the time it ended, the instructor nodded once, satisfied, and that single gesture felt heavier than any praise he'd ever received. Outside, the courtyard buzzed again as groups dispersed, tension loosening into laughter and relief. Yukino found him near the steps, eyes scanning his face before he even spoke. You're different, she said quietly. You stood your ground. He smiled, just a little. So did you. She didn't deny it. Kanzaki passed by then, pausing just long enough to glance between them. Looks like you didn't slow each other down after all, he said, tone neutral now, testing over. Yukino met his gaze calmly. We didn't come here to. Kanzaki nodded once and moved on. This time, they did sit together. Not pressed close, just aligned, knees nearly touching, shoulders brushing when the road curved. Yukino rested her head briefly against the window, eyes half closed. Rihito watched the reflection instead of her directly, noticing how calm she looked when she didn't have to perform. When the city came back into view, she spoke without opening her eyes. When this started, I thought closeness meant control, she said. Now, I think it means trust. He nodded. And space. She smiled at that. Back at school, normal life resumed faster than expected. Classes, noise, familiar hallways. But something had shifted. People still looked, still whispered, but it didn't land the same way. Yukino walked with the same composure as always, but now it felt lighter. Rihito walked beside her, without wondering if he belonged there. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the streetlights flickered on, they stopped at the intersection again, the place where so many small decisions had been made. Yukino turned to him, serious but not tense. Next year is going to be harder, she said. Different schedules, more expectations. He nodded. We won't always match pace. No, she agreed. Then she stepped closer and took his hands, grounding, warm. But we can choose direction. He squeezed her fingers. Together, he said, then added, even when we're not side by side. She leaned in and kissed him, not rushed, not hidden, not dramatic, just certain. When she pulled back, she laughed softly. You're not invisible anymore. He smiled. Neither are you. And as they parted for the night, walking in opposite directions for a few steps, before turning back to wave, It was clear this wasn't a story about almost or what ifs anymore. It was about momentum, about growth that didn't erase where they came from, and about two people who learned that choosing each other didn't mean losing themselves. The letter arrived on a Wednesday. Not dramatic, not sealed in anything special. Just a thin envelope waiting on Yukino's desk when she returned from lunch. She didn't open it right away. That was how Rihito knew it mattered. They walked home together in silence, the envelope tucked neatly into her bag, like it might explode if handled wrong. At the intersection, she stopped as usual, but this time she didn't face the road. She faced him. "Come with me," she said. "To where?" "My place." He nodded without asking anything else. Inside her room, she placed the envelope on the desk and sat beside it, hands folded, posture straight. Rihito leaned against the wall, waiting. She finally picked it up, opened it carefully, and read. Once, then again. She exhaled slowly. "I got it," she said. "The recommendation. Full support. They want me to apply early." That was bigger than the interview. Bigger than the trip. "That's incredible," he said, and meant it. She looked up at him. "It's out of prefecture." The air shifted. "How far?" he asked. 3 hours by train," she replied. "If I get in." If. But they both knew she would. She didn't look scared. She looked thoughtful. Like someone standing at a door they'd always known would appear. "I'm not asking you to decide anything," she said quickly. "Not now." "I know," he replied. She hesitated. "But I don't want to pretend this isn't real." He stepped closer. "Then don't," he said. "Talk to me." She nodded, grateful. "I want to go," she admitted. "Not to leave, to grow." He smiled faintly. "That sounds like you." "What do you want?" The question wasn't fair, but it was honest. "I don't know yet," he said. "But I know I don't want to choose by fear anymore." That answer seemed to settle something in her. She stood and hugged him, slow and grounding, arms wrapped around his back, forehead resting against his shoulder. "I was afraid this would make us fragile," she said quietly. "It doesn't," he replied. "It makes us intentional." The weeks that followed were different again. Applications, meetings, conversations that didn't end with easy answers. Rihito began preparing for his own exams more seriously, not to match her, but to see what paths were actually open to him. Yukino grew busier, but not distant. When she was tired, she leaned into him. When he doubted himself, she didn't reassure him blindly. She asked questions that made him think. One afternoon, a teacher handed Rihito a form he hadn't expected. A recommendation of his own. Not as prestigious. Not as far. But real. That night, he showed it to Yukino. She read it carefully, then smiled. "You're moving too," she said. "So are you," he replied. They didn't make promises about distance. They didn't swear anything dramatic. They just kept choosing to show up, to talk, to let change happen without pretending it wouldn't hurt. And somewhere between train schedules and exam dates, between quiet study sessions and late-night walks, it became clear this wasn't a story about whether they'd last. It was about whether they'd keep choosing growth without letting go of each other. And for now, they were. Spring came quietly, not with a dramatic change, just longer light in the afternoons, open windows in classrooms, and a sense that time was moving, whether anyone was ready or not. Yukino's application went out first. She didn't talk about it much after that. She focused on classes, on finishing things properly. When she was tired, she rested her head against Rihito's shoulder without explanation. When she was restless, she walked faster and expected him to keep up. He always did. Rihito's days changed too. He stayed after school more often now, meeting with teachers, reviewing options he'd never seriously considered before. Not because he wanted to chase her path, but because standing still no longer felt like safety. It felt like avoidance. One evening while they were studying at his place, Yukino closed her notebook and looked at him. "You're different again," she said. He smiled faintly. "You keep saying that." "This time," she continued, "you're not just reacting. You're deciding." He thought about it. "I think I finally realized I don't disappear just because I'm quiet." She nodded, satisfied. The results came 2 weeks later. Yukino read the email alone in her room. She sat there for a long minute, breathing steadily, letting the weight of it settle. Then she went to find him. He was waiting at the intersection when she arrived, hands in his pockets, posture relaxed but attentive. She didn't speak. She just walked up to him and hugged him, tight and unguarded. "I got in," she said into his shoulder. He hugged her back without hesitation. "I knew you would." She pulled back, eyes bright but steady. "I accepted." There it was, clear, chosen. "I'm proud of you," he said. "I was afraid you'd say something else," she admitted. "Like what?" "That you'd be sad," she said, "or disappointed." He shook his head. "I am sad, a little. But I'm not disappointed. You didn't run. You chose." That mattered to her. She could tell. They walked that night without talking much, hands brushing occasionally, steps matched by habit. At her street, she stopped and faced him. "I leave at the end of summer," she said. "We have months, not weeks." He nodded. "That's time." "And after?" He didn't answer right away. He didn't need to. "We'll talk," he said finally. "When we know more." She smiled. "That's very you." The next day, Rihito received his own email. Not acceptance, not rejection, an invitation. An interview for a program closer to home, focused, practical, quiet, in a way that suited him. He read it twice, then closed his phone and stared at the ceiling. That night, he showed it to Yukino. She read it carefully, then looked up at him. "Do you want it?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "I think I do." "Then take it," she replied. "Not for me, for you." He nodded. Summer approached, with a strange mix of urgency and calm. They made memories without labeling them as such. Shared meals, late walks, afternoons spent doing nothing important. They didn't cling, they didn't pull away. They learned how to hold something gently. On the last day of term, as the school emptied and the air buzzed with endings, Yukino stood beside Rihito at the gate. "We're changing," she said. "We are," he agreed. She took his hand. "But we're not erasing anything." He squeezed her fingers. "No, we're building on it." They didn't promise forever. They didn't swear anything dramatic. They just stood there, together, choosing the direction they were walking, separately and side by side, aware that what they had wasn't fragile because it was changing. It was strong because it could.